Chapter 1143, Suck Yourself Off, the system yelled in his mind. When did you become so vulgar? Gustav teased internally. I'm happy to be of help, Endrik smiled while responding. One last thing I can reveal to you is, after the fifth premonition, everything will end. Endrik's smile faded at this point. But it is my job to make sure that doesn't happen, right? Gustav could more or less tell that this was the case. Yes, and every one of us will join hands with you to battle, Endrik replied. All right then. Thanks once more for the information. Gotta go meditate now. Gustav waved as he walked further away from the oasis. Endrik watched him walk away and could understand that Gustav would have so many questions, but there was nothing he could do in the meantime. Endrik decided to head back into the oasis after this to further channel his bloodline. It embodies the energy of the universe. That is why it is called universal enlightenment, a figure whose body was made of constellations and galaxies voiced out within an unknown realm. I draw the energy of the universe. Angie questioned while floating in a cross-legged position. Not right now, you don't. You don't even know how to properly draw energy from your surroundings. You gather kinetic energy and discharge it when it could be used for other purposes, the figure disclosed. Oh, how else can I use it then? Within a fog of pitch darkness, a throne could be spotted up ahead with a figure kneeling in front of it. With the amount of concentrated darkness within the vicinity, visibility was at 0%. However, the figure kneeling in front of the throne could see rather clearly within. Another figure donned in a dark armor stood beside the throne. This figure didn't look human. It had hollow and sunken eyes, which were also laced with darkness. The dark armor had weird carvings on them, and it seemed like it was the body of this unknown figure. Claws could be seen on its hands and legs as well. You have been using my power all this time. It is time for you to start using yours, the figure standing beside the throne voiced out. The figure kneeling had his eyes closed initially, and a small mark was on his forehead. He slowly opened his eyes. Indescribable intent brimmed from his gaze as he stared at the unknown figure standing beside the throne. I don't want this power if it will change who I am, Falco stated. This is not who you are. This weak, pathetic, low-life personality you have adopted is a facade, my king, the dark armored figure replied. Shut it. I am who I am, and anything that will change that, I won't allow, Falco stated with a strong tone. Accept the darkness, the dark armored figure stated. Embody the negativity, become our sovereign once more, the figure added. I refuse, and I will keep refusing, Falco replied. You cannot stay like this forever, you fool. I mean, my king, I will continue to fight for you, but eventually your true power will awaken. While the group were still in their trance-like state, Endrik had returned to the 5th level to keep channeling his bloodline, while Gustav continued meditating. Everyone seemed to be undergoing massive transformation that would take years to achieve. The world government seemed really hell-bent on winning the ISOP with the boost they had practically given the candidates. The substitutes did not get to enjoy the same treatment. After this endeavor, it was certain that the 20 who had been given a 1-week access to the oasis would surpass all of their peers by multiple bounds. They were already some of the strongest mixed bloods in the MBO, and now they would get even stronger. The night went by very quickly, and the last day arrived. Gustav had spent all this time meditating and trying to heal his slightly damaged channels, which was going well, but he still wasn't completely healed. He was lucky this didn't affect his strength. He had no choice but to stay out of the oasis so as not to make matters worse. He opened his eyes after some time, and insurmountable energy gathered around his frame. Zing, 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 zing. Over 200 spherical balls containing destructive energy appeared all around Gustav. They were purplish in color with red lightning arcs swimming across their circumference. System, add some of that energy you absorbed to every one of these orbs, Gustav demanded. Huh? You know it's for backup, right? The system voiced internally. This is also for backup. Add M. Gustav replied. Okay, the system didn't know what Gustav was driving at when these orbs were already very powerful. Red energy phased out of Gustav as he stretched his hand forward to touch the spherical balls one after the other. A couple of minutes later, all of the balls had turned from purplish to dark red, while black electric arcs swam across it. The all emitted fierce, destructive energy which the air to vibrate intensely due to their existence. Gustav went back to his seating position after imbuing them with more energy and looked upwards before whispering, "Please visit Panda and 1. Combine." He snapped his fingers. Tsia. The spherical balls of destructive energy began to phase into one another at quick pace. With every combination, they grew larger and larger. A few seconds later, a gigantic building-sized orb had appeared. The air sizzled with intensity upon the final product of the combination, causing weird reactions to the vicinity. Compress, Gustav voiced out. A space compression energy phased out of Gustav at this point, and the massive spherical orb began to reduce in size. Do you know what you just created? The system voiced with a slight tone of terror. A planet-destroying orb. Yes, I'll call it planet-desecrating orb, Gustav decided with a tone of delight. You are crazy. That thing can destroy a planet almost twice the size of Earth. The system yelled. Exactly why I call it backup, Gustav replied. Now, let's make more, Gustav added. Did this idiot even hear what I just said? Hours upon hours passed, and Gustav spent half the day creating more planet-desecrating orbs. He didn't stop even after creating more than 10 of them. This couldn't be called a backup anymore. It was more like a backup that had multiple other backups. The system could only hope there wouldn't come a time where he had to use this, because whoever would trigger the activation of such an attack would have an empty graveyard. It was already evening time at this point, and the others began to open their eyes. When only 4 of them got out of the trance-like state, but the 4 had to remain in place with their hands locked, so as not to disturb the others who might still be undergoing transformation from the predecessor's connection. After about 30 minutes, everyone had opened their eyes. They began to swim out at this point with delighted expressions. It was obvious that they had transformed a lot from this encounter, and they couldn't wait to test out the new abilities they had unlocked. Fly upon swimming out of the oasis one after the other. They were met with a powerful pressure. What in the world is that? They all looked up with expressions of disbelief. In the distance, a large floating spherical ball could be sighted. It was as massive as a floating building, and it emitted such destructiveness that they could feel they would get obliterated if it was to get activated. What is going on? Teamy and Glade, who had come out of the oasis last, voiced with looks of concern. It's Gustav, Angie stated. It is always him. That monster has increased in strength again. They headed forward as they spotted a person in the distance amidst the mist. This massive spherical ball had stirred up. A streak of black, destructive electric arcs were swimming across the ball. One shot out unexpectedly in Angie's direction. Everyone had expected that with Angie's speed, she would easily swerve out of the way, but to their surprise, Thirish, the lightning streak, arrived before her and suddenly made a spin around her figure before disappearing. Sniff. Angie breathed in intensely as her figure lit up for a bit before she turned around. Achoo. Boom. Angie suddenly sneezed caused the first level of oasis up ahead to blast upwards as the surroundings vibrated intensely. The water blasted upwards, reaching a height of more than 300 feet before descending. Pan D N0V1 COM. When did she? Everyone had looks of surprise on their faces after witnessing what just happened. Compress. A familiar voice was heard from within the mist in the next instant. Zezian, the massive spherical ball, shrieked quickly before their very eyes and disappeared. Everyone's attention was drawn from Angie towards the person responsible for the creation of the spherical ball. Chapter 1144. You two mind telling us what in the Mary Mother of Zechariah that was? He questioned with a weird look while alternating his gaze between Gustav and Angie. It is mother of J. I know what it goddamn is. He cut Falco off before he could complete his sentence. Just creating a backup, Gustav shrugged as he stepped forward. Pan DN0V1 COM, you call that thing a backup? E blurted out with a conflicted expression. That's no backup, that's mayhem, Matilda voiced out as well. To the enemies, it definitely will be. A smirk appeared on Gustav's face that caused chills to crawl down everyone's spine. I have unlocked more abilities related to my bloodline. Angie cheerfully broke the brief silence. It wasn't just speed-related. Matilda questioned from the side. Angie shook her head in response. Looks like I'm not the only one who has undergone a big increase in strength, Gustav added while scrutinizing all of them. The Oasis connected use to our bloodline predecessors, he revealed. Oh, so that was what Endrick was talking about, Gustav voiced in response. Where is my hubby? Sheila hopped forward with a look of curiosity. Go find him at the 5th level, Gustav replied. Off I go. Sheila turned around while giggling only to be held back by Vin and Iggy-Cougar-Shameless Pedo. You are all at the kilo rank now? That's good, Gustav voiced out as he noticed no one was below the 2nd step of the kilo rank. Not just that, we have also unlocked hidden potentials in our bloodlines by connecting with our predecessors. Can't wait to test them out, Ealdris and Rhea voiced out one after the other. Only Falco seemed to not share in the hype as everyone. He just stood at the sidelines. Falco had already reached the 3rd step of the kilo rank from this endeavor, so everyone just felt he was tired, or something, which was why they weren't too bothered by his current lack of enthusiasm. You should have joined us, Gus, EB stated, and have hundreds of thousands of predecessors down my throat. I'd rather not. Gustav could imagine how chaotic it would have been due to the numerous bloodlines in his possession. Don't destroy nature. You can test out your new abilities when we arrive at planet Ozius, Gustav instructed. This was quite hypocritical of him, since any ability he tested would usually affect the natural surroundings. The entire group had jolly expressions, and one could see that they had truly leveled up. With their current strength, they rivaled the strengths of even well-known squads in the MBO. We are leaving tomorrow. I hope you are all ready, Gustav announced. Everyone had sharp expressions upon hearing this. They were all fired up and ready to showcase their strength at the intergalactic youngsters' show of power. I am hyped up, he stated while rubbing his afro. Hours later, it was already dark and almost midnight at this point. Some were meditating, and others were discussing all around the patch of beautiful flowers surrounding the 1st level of the oasis. The scenery was even more beautiful at night due to glowing stream ahead. Some of the flower petals had dim glows as well. You take that half while I take the other half, Teamy said to Glade. Why do you want to have all the cool ones? Why don't you take that half while I take the other half? Glade responded with a look of disapproval. Such abilities would be wasted on you, Teamy responded with a look of ridicule. Oh, you want to go now? Don't think for a second you're more powerful than me just because you've been unlocking the better abilities. Glade threw Teamy a fierce look. You never stood a chance, you monkey-tailed tramp, Teamy replied with a vulgar tone. Foom, both of them unleashed their bloodline energy at this point, causing a great clash. The vicinity vibrated as winds blew. Knock it off, you two. The others came to separate them before anything could happen. On the other side of the stream, Gustav laid on the patch of grass while Angie laid her head on his chest. Her hands were slowly caressing his face as they both laid in place with peaceful looks on their faces. She could hear his heartbeat. It beat in a slow but firm rhythm, almost like Gustav had an unshakable heart. Please visit Panda N0V1. Gus, Angie called out to him with a soft tone. Gustav responded with an without raising his head. Don't worry about me during the competition. No matter what happens, I want to be a support, not a hindrance, Angie voiced while slowly turning her face towards his. I know, Gustav replied. I know I have been naive in the past, but I won't fail to do what needs to be done when the time comes, Angie added. Angie, do you know why I always liked you even though I pushed you away? Gustav suddenly asked. Huh? What are you saying? Angie's face reddened up as he voiced out. You reminded me of myself when I was young and full of heroic dreams. I also used to want to be a savior, a protector of the weak, a pillar of light. Angie's mouth slightly hung open as she heard Gustav say this. It is never wrong to harbor such a mindset, but it is wrong to harbor such a mindset thinking your journey is going to be one full of roses, Gustav stated. Can you bear the suffering? Can you carry the weight of guilt on your shoulders? Can you be decisive when it is required? Can you make choices that might brand you a villain? Gustav added, the world's logic of a hero is flawed, which is why an anti-hero is more of a hero than a hero most times. He voiced out once more. Angie's face showed a look of contemplation after hearing this before she spoke. So, do you still want to be a hero? Angie asked. I just want to be me, not a hero or a villain, just Gustav doing the things he wants to do, becoming unhindered by the ideals and restriction of the world. No white knight or dark lord becoming one who writes his fate because at the moment, I only have it written for me like a script that an actor has no choice but follow. Angie felt Gustav's last sentence was hinting at something deeper than it seemed, but she couldn't place her thumb on it. One could say Gustav wasn't very controlled at the moment, since he literally did what he wanted, and even disobeyed higher-ups when their decision wasn't suiting to him. Only Gustav knew what he truly meant. I will stand behind you like a pillar, Angie voiced out. You can lean on me for support, she added. You're the one leaning on me right now, though, Gustav stated. Angie chuckled and moved her face upwards. That's because I want to do this, Angie said before placing her lips on his. Lips smacking sounds could be heard faintly in the background as the two engaged in a passionate smooching session. The night went by very quickly, bringing the arrival of the next morning. Our aircraft is here to take us to the first base, Gustav voiced while pointing at the direction that led to the top of the mountain. Everyone was gathered together already in front of the oasis. First person to get to the aircraft gets $1 million, Gustav announced. The announcement instantly caused an uproar as everyone instantly activated their bloodline abilities. A vortex instantly appeared in front of which sucked him into it. Angie blitzed forward, instantaneously causing her figure to disappear within a millisecond. Boom! Heavy winds blasted across her initial location in the next instant. The same moment E and Angie used their bloodlines, the others didn't slack off as well and did the same. Eldris opened his eyes and instantly drew himself to a color above, causing him to close in the distance instantly. Rhea had sunk into the ground instantly, and Timmy's entire body had been covered up with a red glow. He proceeded to dash forward with immense speed, too. All this while everyone was activating their abilities. Gustav had already faded away into oblivion. Boom, 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 boom. All that could be heard at that particular instant was the sound of numerous missile-like explosions. The three people to arrive at the top of the 4,000 feet mountain were Rhea, Finks, and Matilda. They had only arrived a second later, yet they found out the others arrived milliseconds earlier than they did. Maniacs! Finks yelled out, regretting she didn't met the requirements to mimic a person with speed before the race. They had moved 4 times faster than the speed of sound, yet everyone got to the mountaintop before they did. Chapter 1145s. So, who won? Rhea asked. Timmy shrugged before answering. They got here before me, he said while gesturing at Eldris, Elevra, and Endrick. They got here before us. Eldris went ahead and passed the baton to Gustav and Angie, who were already seated in the aircraft in front. When did they? These monsters, Yonda voiced with a look of astonishment. So guys, it was a tie, Gustav announced. And Gus arrived here at the same time, Angie added. Both of them had arrived here at the same instant Gustav had voiced out the word million. They moved at the same time and arrived at the aircraft instantaneously. Meanwhile, the others that were still speeding forward looked slow to both of them. Even EE, who activated a vortex, was spotted by Gustav, who watched as the vortex slowly phased into existence and sucked him in. He and Angie were already in the aircraft at this point. Sucks to not have super speed. The others complained with looks of unwillingness, but they had no choice but to accept the results. Maybe I should have used that. EE slightly regretted not using one of his new dimensional abilities. It'll just save the surprise for later. EE decided as they filed into the aircraft one after the other. The MBO officers who were standing on the sidelines still had their jaws hung loosely, with open mouths. The mountain path had almost been completely obliterated from the actions the group had just performed. The aircraft would have gotten damaged as well even if no one made contact with it, but Gustav already used his energy to protect it after he arrived here. The aircraft took off immediately after they had all boarded. They headed off to the MBO first base. Deep within space, a ship could be seen in a stationary position right behind a massive asteroid. It was as massive as a football pitch with a pentagon shape and four pillar-like extensions at the edges. Greenish floating rocks could be seen in the vicinity, which would make one wonder how this spacecraft managed to arrive in the midst of all these without collision and damage. Within the spacecraft, a crew could be spotted moving to and fro, while a man with leather-like covering and a scarf covering the right side of his face walked towards the cockpit. The crew members greeted with respect when they spotted him, and some even threw friendly remarks at him, which he received positively. Upon arriving at the cockpit, a globe-like projection could be spotted in the middle. The projection displayed multiple parts of space and seemed to be triangulating something. A 10-feet-tall figure stood right behind the globe-like projection. He emitted an authoritative aura as he stood there. Some noticeable features were the dark, tentacle-like things protruding from his back. "Captain, are we really doing this?" The male with a scarf covering half his face voiced out. "We accepted it months earlier, so yes, we are going through with it," the captain replied. "There is no point to it, since our contractors have been caught, presumably dead," the male with a scarf covering half his face voiced out once more. "Rick, we can't get payment if we don't get the job done," the captain stated. "I have a bad feeling about this. Can't we just focus on other jobs?" Rick questioned. "The payment can get us going for the next 50 years without having to work a single job," the captain voiced out. "Pan Diendero V1 CM, that is why we have you, Rick. You are our master planner. The crew will follow whatever plans you draft up, so I'm sure this will go well," the captain voiced with a dismissive tone. "And since the contract has long been drafted, we get the money regardless of their demise, so long as we complete the job. So pull up your big boy pants. We are doing this," the captain added before turning around with a giant smirk on his face. "Of course, I am coming with you lots." "Did you think we were going to let our main candidates go alone?" Grand Commander Cheyenne voiced out to the group of 20 before him. Like, you don't have better things to do? A whole Grand Commander?" Sheila voiced with a tone of disappointment. "Is that any way to speak to your great-grandfather, little Sheila?" Grand Commander Cheyenne didn't seem bothered by her disrespectful tone and smiled. "Humph. Gee, Grandpa, you still owe me 12 boxes of chocolates, 16 crates of beer, 24 packs of cookies, and 32 carts of juice," Sheila listed while folding her arms with a pout. Shameless lowly, the shorty drinks, huh? They're related? The group threw out remarks of disbelief one after the other. "Please visit Panda, M0V1. Now, my little Sheila, great-grandpa will pay up okay." The aura of sharpness around Grand Commander Cheyenne reduced as he pat Sheila on her head. "How are you two even related?" She's, Timmy voiced out with a look of confusion. In black doesn't mean gee, Grandpa isn't my relative, you fool. I was just born with a different skin color, Sheila yelled out. Oh, Timmy nodded in response. Anyways, it is time for you all to gear up for ISOP, Grand Commander Cheyenne announced. I have assembled a technological team specially tasked with assisting you all in this. Your spacecraft will be ready to leave within the hour, Grand Commander Cheyenne added. This is an amplifier. You all have 4 amplification shots before it runs out, so make sure you make use of it wisely during ISOP, a bolt-in suit shell, healing meds. The group was currently within what looked like a massive warehouse with technology items stacked at different corners. The group assigned to handle this actually had someone that Gustav was familiar with, included. Mara, did you make this? Gustav questioned while holding onto a metal ball. Yes, and the combat suit too. The beautiful red-haired girl, who had a slight semblance to Boss Danzo, replied. What combat suit? Gustav asked with a slightly suspicious expression. I created an adaptive combat suit for the ISOP candidates which merges with a mixed bloodline, cells, and skin, she disclosed with a proud look. You have really gotten better at creating tech. Keep it up. Gustav rubbed her head with look of praise. Despite being age mates with Gustav, she didn't seem irked by his gesture. Instead, she looked delighted. Thank you, now try them on, Mara stated before tapping on a controller. Hey, are those? The ISOP candidates. They look powerful. Do you think we will win? I heard Gustav Crimson is leading the team. Chatters could be heard in the vicinity of the first base as a group of 20 were spotted striding forward with confident expressions. What are they wearing? The group was clad in a blue skin-tight suit with red lines around the waist and neck area. The suit covered up their neck and the back of their head as well, leaving only their faces exposed. A small artistic depiction of Earth could be seen on the left chest area of the suit. The group could be seen heading into the area where aircraft were kept. A visible spacecraft could be spotted up ahead. It was so much larger than the aircraft parked in the surroundings that it could be seen vividly even though it was positioned at the far end. The group moved towards the spacecraft, where a bunch of MBO officers could be seen standing around it. The spacecraft was as massive as a small skyscraper in a horizontal position. It was at least 7 stories tall, too. It had design with a red, green, and blue color, depicting both the Earth and MBO organization. It looked quite majestic. It is time, Grand Commander Cheyenne voiced out from his position in between 2 Grand Generals. Are you ready to represent the Earth and win this competition? He questioned. Yes, the group yelled with enthusiasm. Grand General Cheyenne nodded at them and gestured at them to move into the spacecraft. Gustav couldn't understand why they decided to make them travel in such a large spacecraft, but he wasn't too bothered by it. The travel to planet Osius would take more than 3 weeks of journeying through space. Even with the multiple dimensional gateways set across space to make the journey faster, planet Osius was located in a distant galaxy, so this was normal. They would arrive at the venue just a few days before ISOP would officially kick off. Gustav got into the spacecraft, which also had a couple of crew on board who were tasked with piloting, space navigation, cooking, cleaning, and other tasks. It looked even more massive within with multiple hallways. This is going to be one hell of a ride, E voiced out excitedly as they moved towards the bedroom area. Sorry guys, privileged tiers are still unavailable. Recently lost a lot of words due to some situations. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know. Report chapter so we can fix it as soon as possible. Tip, you can use left, right, A, and D keyboard keys to browse between chapters. Chapter 1146. This is going to be one hell of a ride, E voiced out excitedly as they moved towards the bedroom area. Despite the spacecraft being quite massive, the bedrooms were not very large, and there were not a high number of them. They had to share the bedrooms, for each before they headed to the sitting area. Everyone wondered why the rooms were so little considering how big the spacecraft was, but after making use of God eyes, Gustav understood the reason. The group soon arrived in the sitting area where hundreds of seats positioned in rows and columns could be spotted. At the edges, some of the walls were see-through, which meant anyone that sat close to the wall could see into space while they were journeying. Gustav, being a sucker for space and nature, proceeded to pick a seat close to the wall, while the others also sat in their desired positions. "The substitutes will be joining us in a few," Grand Commander Cheyenne announced after arriving in the sitting area. Gustav wasn't surprised about this, since it only made sense for them to follow. This meant they would be around 60 of them journeying on this spacecraft to planet Osius. Up ahead in the seating area was the cockpit where the pilot and navigators were situated. The journey would begin the moment the substitutes came on board. The Earth's ISOP candidates are leaving for planet Osius today. As you can see, they are moving into the spacecraft with the Earth and MBO design. We can only hope for the victory of our young participants. All across the world, the area where the spacecraft had appeared was be displayed all across the world on different media outlets. The media outlets also made reference to how the ISOP competition would be broadcasted on Earth when it begins. Of course, there were people who had the privilege to witness ISOP in person, but the slots were already full. Only a limited number of people from each planet participating was allowed. The media outlets displayed the spacecraft lifting off the ground and disappearing into the sky after a while. 5 days later, "I thought you would go with him," Gradier Xanatus voiced out to a beautiful lady clad in all-white garment. "This takes priority. Besides, he is safe with that grandpa, so it's fine," Miss Amy replied. "Oh, I guess you are right, young miss," Gradier Xanatus nodded. "My avatar will remain on Earth while I try to find out more both here and on my planet," Miss Amy informed. "The team we sent out haven't discovered anything yet," Gradier Xanatus reported. "I am not surprised. Even I can't sense a shred of its existence after its disappearance," Miss Amy replied. "In times like this, I always send a kid to investigate, and somehow he always discovers something that even experienced officers and researchers are unable to find." Gradier Xanatus felt Gustav always managed to crack every mysterious situation without a lead. "That reminds me, he must have witnessed it too. How did he react?" Miss Amy questioned. "He had just returned to the tower, then we didn't speak much about it because he was busy with getting permission for the ISOP candidates to visit the oasis," Gradier Xanatus disclosed. "I see." Miss Amy decided she would still hold a conversation about this with Gustav later to see if he had any idea about it. "Looks like I will be attending that ISOP after all," Miss Amy voiced out. "Oh, it is already quite late to leave by this time, young Mississippi. The people attending already left 2 days ago, and it takes 3 weeks of journeying." Gradier Xanatus was still explaining when Miss Amy cut him short. "That is no problem. I'll journey there myself," she stated. "Should take about a week. So I still have a week more," Miss Amy muttered with a calculative tone. "Ha." Gradier Xanatus' eyes widened slightly. "Do you want to come with me?" she questioned. Young miss, I still have a lot to..." Gradier Xanatus was still answering when she cut him short again. "So, that's a yes then. Good, see you in a week time," she stated before walking out of the room while waving. "Gradier Xanatus, keep me posted if you discover anything," she added before completely disappearing. Deep in space, a spacecraft moved at incredible speed, parting a cloud of red dust in the path. There were never-ending specks of stars, but due to the speed of the spacecraft, these stars were soon left behind. The aircraft was moving at more than 100,000 light years per hour, which was considered insanely fast. Within a particular part of the spacecraft, a group could be seen standing in front of an holographic screen. Will he break the records? He probably will. Dennis sure is strong. The group chatted amongst themselves as they watched a display in the screen above. A purple-haired male could be seen gliding across a turbulent-looking sea on a small piece of block. This male avoided the lightning strikes from above and even parried them sometimes as the small piece of block kept taking him forward. "Please visit Panda N0VE1. He is getting there, Glade voiced out. Do you really think he can surpass Fildhor's record? Falco questioned. Doubt it, Teamy and Glade responded at the same time. They briefly glanced at each other before turning away. On the screen, a golden-colored lightning bolt suddenly descended from the sky and landed right in the turbulent sea. Foom! The sea suddenly rose with intensity, throwing the purple-haired male high into the sky. The piece of block kept spiraling intensely in the air as he reached out to grab it. However, before his hand could make contact with it, Thrara, 7 lightning bolts descended from 7 different positions in the sky and struck him down. Bam! His figure evaporated in the next instant, and a display of game over was shown on the holographic screen. Some of them let out disappointment sounds as a figure, who was standing up ahead, pulled a transparent helmet off his head. I have a plan, but I can't go through with it till nightfall, Gustav disclosed. Really? Is everyone going to be saved? Yusha's face brightened up as she questioned. If it works, yes, Gustav replied. At this point, Yusha was all beams and smiles. But it only has a 50% chance of working. Her face turned a bit sour after this follow-up revelation. Is there any way to raise the odds? Yusha questioned. Gustav shook his head in response before saying, the only thing that can be done right now is secret evacuation. The MBO will handle that. I can't believe this is happening. Yusha's side her figure plummeted, leaned back against the chair. In case it doesn't work, not everyone has to die at the very least, Gustav added. There must be a way to save everyone. Yusha couldn't handle the fact that her concert would cause death despite the fact that it wasn't her fault. Like your employees said, don't try to inform them. The MBO plans to evacuate the fans discreetly. Nobody will be informed about it, Gustav said in response. What will you be doing till nightfall? Yusha asked, since there was still around 5 hours left before the sun would set. Making plans and assisting in getting the fans out, Gustav replied before standing to his feet. Let me come with you. I want to help, Yusha requested. PANDNOV, 1 inch, but Yusha paused her sentence after noticing Gustav pause in his tracks. Gustav's face beamed up as he slowly turned around. He just had a crazy idea. You're coming with me, he voiced out. Huh? Yusha was stunned by the sudden change of heart. No, young miss, cannot possibly. The assistants were about to refute, but they were met with the response of whooshing air. Young miss, Officer Crimson. They had both disappeared before any of the assistants could complete their sentence. Hours later, Gustav was floating above the conventional ring with massive bat-like wings sprouting out of his back and a beautiful female figure in his arms. Are you ready to go again? He inquired. Gustav's face beamed up as he slowly turned around. He just had a crazy idea. You're coming with me, he voiced out. Huh? Yusha was stunned by the sudden change of heart. No, young miss, cannot possibly. The assistants were about to refute, but they were met with the response of whooshing air. Young miss, Officer Crimson. They had both disappeared before any of the assistants could complete their sentence. Hours later, Gustav was floating above the conventional ring with massive bat-like wings sprouting out of his back and a beautiful female figure in his arms. Are you ready to go again? He inquired. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know, report chapter, so we can fix it as soon as possible. Tip, you can use left, right, A, and D keyboard keys to browse between chapters. Chapter 1147 Key. It was like the blade made contact with the hardest metal in the universe as the atomic blade failed to cut through the creatures. However, Thwiwi, more than 20 of them were still sent hurling through the air upon contact due to Gustav's high physical prowess. The creatures, who looked like giant bees with golden and silver-plated armors covering their entire body up to their head, smashed into each other one after the other as the wind and force generated from Gustav's swing crashed into them. Gustav wasted no time in flying upwards, even more as he swung out repeatedly, sending hundreds of them spiraling across the air and crashing into one another. These massive bee-like creatures shot out a red-like web from the tip of their rear towards Gustav. Thousands of these red-like webs shot towards him with intensity, which he wasted no time in parrying one after the other. Ta, 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 ta. It sounded like the clanking of metals once more as Gustav slashed out repeatedly at the web-like projectiles. In a single second, he had slashed out more than 1,000 times, sending these webs back to the creatures. Some of the creatures that made contact with the red-like web after Gustav's counter were instantly shredded to pieces despite their sturdy armor covering. Gustav had dropped thousands of them since the battle began, and continued to show forth his prowess until a pure golden bee-like creature appeared. Upon its appearance, this creature instantly shot out a web-like projectile that was more than 1,000 times larger than the ones its subordinates had been shooting out. Gustav stretched his atomic blade forward, at first before making a weird expression. Zing, the atomic blade disappeared, and a milky glow instantly coated Gustav's hands as he watched the oncoming massive violet glowing web. This web had bloated the entire sky, and was even several times larger than the mountain below. Swoosh, Gustav's wings flapped intensely, and his body bolted across the air at incredible speed, approaching the oncoming projectile. He instantly arrived before it and grabbed some of the web strings with his fingers, which were coated in a milky glow. His figure was getting pushed back upon contact, but in a bit he managed to stabilize himself in the air before raising the massive glowing web. Turning around to spin repeatedly, Gustav flung the massive web back in the direction it came. Z, 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 Z. These creatures' body parts that had been ripped into pieces began to fall from the sky. Gustav didn't stop there, and instantly charged forward once more. He grabbed the massive web again and began swinging it about like a weapon. Panda, NOV, E1 Ting, the massive web disappeared after its creator was killed, and all the creatures in the vicinity had been ripped apart at this point. The milky glow coating Gustav's hand slowly dimmed and disappeared completely, revealing 2 bloodied palms. Looks like whatever that was is stronger than atomic disintegration. Gustav wasn't surprised with this result. He would have lost his fingers, and even his entire body would have been ripped to shreds if atomic disintegration didn't manage to hold up for a bit. Coupled with the sturdiness of his body, he only suffered a light casualty compared to what he should have suffered. Level 52 cleared. Does Gustav Crimson wish to progress to next training level? Yes/no. Just as Gustav was about to give his answer, a voice called out to them. Guys, let's try the gaming room. Gustav recognized this voice to be that of Timmy's. He had a slightly contemplative look on his face before he made his decision. No. Logging out Gustav Crimson, a spectrum of light blinded his vision for a bit before everywhere turned completely whitish. Gustav pulled the transparent helmet from his head and turned around to see that the others in the circle had taken theirs off as well. What is this about a game? Angie questioned. There is a gaming room right next to this one, Timmy replied. Gustav already knew about this since he scanned the entire spacecraft from the first day they left Earth. Please visit Panda N0VE1. You guys have been using the training room since the first day we left Earth. It wouldn't be bad to play games for a bit, Glade stated. Well, technically the training rooms are similar to the gaming room, since they are all simulations. No much different in training and gaming, Gustav disclosed. Lighten up a bit, man. Training won't be as fun as playing games. He tapped Gustav on the back with a persuasive look. We've been training for months too, so maybe a little slacking off won't be bad. Matilda nodded. All right, guys, Gustav finally gave in. They proceeded to leave the training room right after. In another part of Space A, spacecraft as massive as a football pitch with a pentagon shape and four pillar-like extensions at the edges could be seen floating in this part of space. Just a couple hundred kilometers to the northwest of the spacecraft was a giant wormhole. This wormhole, like any other wormhole, twisted the space within, which was like a tunnel. It obviously led somewhere, but it was unknown why this spacecraft remained stationary, not too distant from the wormhole. Within the spacecraft, the crew seemed to be in position at different corners of the spacecraft. They had taken some unknown formation and had serious looks on their faces. In the cockpit area, two male figures seemed to be discussing. Dash, is everything ready now? Dash, all crew members are in position and ready to take action at the appointed time. Dash, that is good. Estimated arrival time. Dash, 12 to 13 hours. Dash, let's do this. Within the ISOP candidate's spacecraft, the pilots of the spacecraft stared at some readings from the navigations with a slightly troubled look. The Orion gate seems dysfunctional, the main pilot voiced out. The readings state that the dimensional energy within is a bit chaotic, one of the navigators informed. We can make a diversion and head for Orion Gate 2, the second navigator suggested. That will set us back 12 hours. The second pilot had a slightly concerned look as he stated. It will, but it definitely is safer, the second navigator replied. Both pilots glanced at each other for a bit before nodding. They already made their decision without even exchanging a word. The spacecraft made a little turn, but continued ahead unhindered. In a couple of minutes, they phased past a gigantic wormhole and continued heading deeper into space. Meanwhile, in one of the spacecraft rooms, EE, 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 EE. Chants of EES name reverberated across the gaming room as a group of more than 20 watched an holographic display up ahead. In the display, EE was spotted riding an hovercar that was escaping the raining of flaming projectiles in the vicinity. The projectiles rained down uncontrollably as EES vehicles sped forward while swerving from side to side. EE is pretty good at this thing. Falco couldn't help but voice out while Gustav smiled and nodded. He was glad EE was having fun. It looked like he had finally returned to his usual cheerful self. He is reaching the high score. A girl yelled in excitement. Everyone fixed their eyes on the projection with even more intensity at this time while Gustav's face suddenly displayed a weird expression. He turned to the side while his face scrunched up. Angie seemed to have noticed this and moved close to him. Is everything okay? She questioned with a concerning tone. I hope so, Gustav replied before turning around to walk away. What do you mean? Angie's face displayed a look of confusion, but before she could voice out her question completely, Gustav was already gone. Are you going to ask them about it? The system questioned while Gustav walked through a brightly lit corridor. They are the pilots, so I'm sure they know what they are doing, but I'm curious as to why we skipped a gateway. Wouldn't that make our journey slower? Gustav muttered while walking along the corridor. What Gustav had just sensed a while ago was a massive cluster of dimensional energy. He had sensed this up to 5 times since they started this journey, but this was the very first time Gustav, since they moved past it. Gustav knew that these were spatial gateways constructed all across different parts of galaxies to make space journey easier. Unlike the previous times where they went in, this time they didn't, which ended up making Gustav feel a little suspicious. Chapter 1148. Unlike the previous times where they went in, this time they didn't, which ended up making Gustav feel a little suspicious. He soon arrived at the seating area of the spacecraft and walked along one of the aisle. Only a few substitutes and candidates were at the sitting area. Most of them were in the gaming room. Gustav's presence drew their attention as a lot of them had barely seen him since the spacecraft began journeying through space 5 days back. Is there a reason why we didn't use that gateway? Gustav questioned as he arrived at the area where Grand Commander Cheyenne was seated. Grand Commander Cheyenne, who had his eyes closed, replied to Gustav, "The pilots are responsible for our travel. If you want to find out, you should ask them." Grand Commander Cheyenne didn't seem bothered in any way, as he remained in place with his eyes closed. "All right then, I might as well just ask them," Gustav replied before turning and starting to walk ahead. Soon he arrived at the corridor that led to the spacecraft cockpit area and knocked twice as he reached what looked like a dead end. "Huh? Why is he here?" the pilot questioned while staring at the left, where if the holographic screens were displayed. "We don't know," one of the navigators replied, while staring at the display of the dirty blonde-haired young man standing in front of what looked like a metallic shutter. "Should we let him in?" the other navigator questioned. I guess there is no harm in that. I will kick him out if he causes distraction," the pilot stated firmly. One of the navigators clicked a control button, and the shutter slid upwards, giving Gustav access into the spacecraft control room. He walked in with a calm look as usual and slightly inspected the vicinity. The glass walls in front of the pilots was a giant display of space and how fast they were moving. "Why are you here?" one of the navigators inquired. "Why did we skip the last gateway?" Gustav threw a question back. "Oh, that. The gateway had a little dysfunctionality, so it looked unsafe," the first navigator answered. "Dysfunctionality? How?" Gustav asked once more. "Chaotic dimensional energy. It could have damaged the engines of the spacecraft. We were not willing to risk it," the other navigator explained. "I see, but wouldn't this make us slower?" Gustav questioned. "It only sets us back by 12 hours, so long as we get to the second Orion gateway and make use of it," the co-pilot spoke up this time. "Interesting." Gustav took his seat behind and watched as they navigated the way through space. Different holographic screens with different displays were spotted. Some showed estimated routes they were supposed to take, and some showed areas to avoid in space. One also displayed how much time was left till they arrived at Galaxy Flolentia. Why are you still here, kid?" the co-pilot questioned. "Don't mind. Me just carry on like I'm not here," Gustav answered while staring at the transparent walls up ahead. The pilots and navigators didn't really know what to say after this. They didn't want to get any more distracted than this, so they decided not to argue with Gustav over leaving or not leaving. Since he was the only one here out of all the participants, they felt it was still okay. In another part of space, a dark and green-colored spacecraft hovered several thousand kilometers from a massive wormhole. Within, the crew members could be seen activating some weird spacesuit that covered their entire being. It has to be activated the moment the alarm goes off. Any second later could lead to the mission being a bust, a crew member said to another one through the comms as they stood atop the hovering spacecraft. "Understood," the other crew member nodded. He squatted with a wheel-like device planted to the top of the spacecraft and began to operate this device to a desired frequency. A weird bubble suddenly encapsulated the entire spacecraft in the next instant, also covering the two crew members standing atop the spacecraft. "Captain Brask has activated the console. They must be close. Be ready to activate the wheel," the crew member voiced to his subordinate, who nodded in response. Tying. The wheel-like device planted to the top of the spacecraft beamed up, and both crew members waited with keen eyes while staring at a direction in this unknown part of space. Within the control room of the spacecraft, a male with dark tentacles sprouting from his back voiced out, "It is almost 12 hours. I hope you are right, Rick. My calculations are always precise. They will appear at any time from now," the man with a scarf covering the right side of his face replied. The captain was about to speak out again when blaring alarms suddenly began to go off. "Activate it now," the captain yelled through the comms. "Please visit Panda N0V1. The two crew members atop the spacecraft heard the command, and the one squatting quickly raised his finger to tap on the button in the middle. At the same instant his finger was descending towards the button, A piercing starlight far ahead the massive wormhole had appeared. This starlight looked like it was moving, but with so much speed that even though it was thousands of light years away, it arrived before the wormhole in a couple of moments. Tap. The instant the finger of the crew member made contact with the button, the starlight also arrived before the wormhole. In that split second, it could be seen that the starlight was actually a large spacecraft movement at incredible speed. The wormhole suddenly made a fluttering sound as it changed color, then instant this spacecraft flew into it. Seeing it turned completely violet. Cease? Yes. Within the spacecraft that had been laying in wait since, all of the crew members rejoiced with loud voices. You did it, Ray. I knew I could count on you, the captain voiced with a joyful tone. We can't celebrate yet until we confirm he is dead, Ray replied with a normal tone. He will be. They can't escape there without us, so they will all meet their end without our intervention anyways, the captain replied. Ray slightly raised his left eyebrow after hearing that. Yes, I haven't forgotten our agreement, Ray. We're only killing the boy, but we won't harm the others, the captain voiced with a cheerful tone, while tapping Ray's shoulder repeatedly. Lighten up, he added. Humph, this job really put a lot on me. Let's finish it properly, Ray voiced in response. Let's finish it. A smile appeared on the captain's face as a vortex appeared in front of them, which their spacecraft got sucked into. Seeing upon their disappearance, the Gantt wormhole returned to normal. Soft the portal that would lead to the conventional center floating about 50 feet above. We're still trying to get in. At this point, hundreds of MBO officers were headed towards the area to clear them off the premises. It had been over 30 minutes since Gustav started trying to create the projection, and so far he hadn't been successful yet. The MBO could no longer take any chances, so the next move was to get everyone within the vicinity out of the premises. This time they didn't care about the Jenxitus figuring out that they were aware of the nanites planted. The aim was to save as many as possible, and there were still millions in the premises that will be affected if the nanites go off. Dash, what is going on? Dash, why are there MBO officers here? Some of the fans within the vicinity who were initially dancing and vibing to Yusha's performance stopped as they noticed the MBO officers arriving in droves. The instant the MBO officers arrived, they commenced the operation. Spreading out, each of them placed a circular and metallic-looking device on the ground within the multitude of fans. The fans were clueless as to what was going on, but no MBO member gave any form of explanation. Dash Dove C planted, Dash Dove E planted, Dash Dove H planted, Dash Dove E planted. The MBO officers reported through the comms one after the other, and in a couple of seconds, a command was heard. All doves successfully planted. All officers should activate their shielding armors now. The officers in the vicinity did as told, and in the next instance, easy ironing, Pandy, the one afterwards, every single fan within the AOC of this glow vanished. The fans that were left in the vicinity and had witnessed the disappearance of the others became wary. Some of them tried to run and escape the area, but of course, the MBO officers were well skilled and more powerful than ordinary mixed bloods, so they easily handled the situation. With every planting of the doves and activation, up to 50,000 fans would be teleported in an instant. Chapter 1149, the candidates that were initially getting thrown across the place found stability as the suit glued them to the floor of the spacecraft. With this, they began making their way forward in a bit to understand what exactly was happening. Within the control room, Gustav sat in place with metallic straps connected to his body as he looked up ahead. The pilots and the navigators had looks of horrors as they tapped on multiple buttons while the lights in the entire control room kept flickering. From the transparent glass walls up ahead, all that could be seen was strobing red lines of light. They were transverse a world of complete red, and Gustav could tell that this gateway wouldn't lead to anywhere good. His eyes formed slits as he peered forward with a suspicious but calm gaze. This was a setup. He instantly came to this conclusion. We're going to appear somewhere different in the next second. The system suddenly informed him. Tap, tap, tap. Gustav tapped on his dimensional bracelet at very quick pace and activated it in less than a second. The bracelet displayed this information, which caused Gustav's face to deepen with suspicions. He initially wanted to try if the bracelet could transport the entire spacecraft away before they arrived at the other side of the gateway, but unfortunately, this was the result. It didn't make sense to Gustav, considering they were in a dimensional gateway at the moment, which increased his suspicions. We are being drawn to the other side. We can't make a getaway. The pilot yelled with a disturbed look. Activate the drift beam. It isn't functional. The jump-back checkpoint beam, also currently unoperational. We have to do something before. It is too late. Zizian, a golden light suddenly illuminated the entire area and sucked the spacecraft into it. Fine, they appeared within an unknown area in the next instant. The functionality of the entire spacecraft came to a stop at this point, as everything turned off. The engines, the lights, the navigation systems. The spacecraft began slowly drifting in this unknown space without any direction. The sticky void, one of the pilots voiced with a defeated tone as he looked up ahead after letting go of the control jockey. Whatever that means, I can tell it isn't anything nice. Gustav unstrapped himself as he stood to his feet. He moved forward as well to scrutinize this unknown part of space where they had appeared in. All that could be seen in the vicinity were glowing golden sands in different areas. Not a single star could be sighted in this part of space, but one could see a cluster of floating rocks towards the southeast. It really didn't look like they had arrived anywhere special from what Gustav could see, but he knew there was more to this unknown part of space than met the eyes. God Eyes has been activated. Gustav let out an exclamation of confusion as he looked around with God Eyes activated. Everything would usually have a kind of reading and different look whenever he activated God Eyes, but surprisingly everything in this part of space remained its usual color. There was no reading. There was no difference, like they weren't really there. What is up with this? Gustav wondered as he took another step forward. Finnenson's, he suddenly felt a strange energy as his body let off slight afterimage before returning to normal. This was something that shouldn't be happening unless he was making use of his speed. So it made things even more confusing. We won't be able to leave here without help, the other pilot stated. What exactly is this place? Gustav questioned. It is a part of space that is usually avoided by spacecraft pilots, and Captain Grand Commander Cheyenne suddenly appeared within the control room. Why? Gustav questioned. Because everything that finds itself here gets trapped and eventually gets snuffed out of existence, Grand Commander Cheyenne replied. Usually, there is a 0% chance of the pilots will make a mistake that would lead us here, which means we got here through unknown means, he added. Gustav was still waiting for them to explain why this sticky void was as bad as they said it was. We believe the Orion 2 gateway was sabotaged, which led us to a different location than intended, the pilot voiced out. The question now is who or what is responsible for the sabotage, and what their aim is. Grand Commander Cheyenne's face displayed a calm, but deep expression. How exactly do we perish here? Can't the engines be restarted? Gustav questioned. Please visit Panda N0V1. The sticky void works by, just as Great Commander Cheyenne was about to explain. A bright glow of light drew everyone's attention. A spacecraft surrounded by a weird milky buble suddenly appeared up ahead. All of the ISOP candidates and substitutes had gathered in the sitting area, so they had all witnessed the appearance of this strange spacecraft amidst their confusion. Their faces displayed an even more conflicted expression upon the appearance of this dark spacecraft. What is going on? This was still the question running through the minds of everyone. A male with a dark helmet suddenly appeared above the spacecraft a moment later. Dark tentacles could be seen protruding from his sides, and he was well over 10 feet tall as he stood proudly above the spacecraft. Two others appeared and stood right beside him as they stared directly at the ISOP spacecraft. Soft media outlets were buzzing with this information. A lot of people wonder what the cause could be. Bang, 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 bang. All of a sudden, white streaks fell from the skies and landed in the premises of the conventional center. An unknown group in white battle mech have just arrived at the venue. While breaking the news, another crazy scenario began playing out. Get into the conventional center and assist the other team. The whitish mech in the middle of the five that had just arrived, voiced out with a commanding tone. The MBO officers who were in the vicinity took notice of their arrival and actively approached them. Skonskert had begun. Initially, it was meant to be an 8 hours concert, and the nanites was set to explode when the event was at its peak. With the Jenxidus figuring out about the MBO having knowledge about Theorplan, they needed to speed up the process now. Gustav knew there was no guarantee the nanites wouldn't explode before the set time, since the Jenxidus might become aware. This was why he actively searched for suspicious-looking fellows before he activated Night Eye. Delaying them was possible through this. The MBO officers are currently in a battle with a bunch of suspicious people they suspect to be Jenxidus members. The system reported. My hunch was right. They sent a group to manually detonate it. Looks like they really don't care for even their own subordinates. The team that had been sent to detonate the nanites manually would definitely perish here, as well if they went through with it. Yet they still showed up to display their unfettered loyalty to the organization. Were they brainwashed? Gustav couldn't understand how they just throw their lives away for this. Gustav retained his focus on trying to complete the night projection while the MBO engaged the Jenxidus members they had come into contact with. Since Gustav was now assured of their presence, he tried to speed things up because there was no saying what could happen now. Breaking news. For reasons unknown, MBO officers have been clearing fans within the premises of the conventional center. We bring you live news from the location of the event. The MBO officers taking fans away without permission. Novi, one's social media, and all sorts of media outlets were buzzing with this information. A lot of people wonder what the cause could be. Bang, 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 bang. All of a sudden, white streaks fell from the skies and landed in the premises of the conventional center. An unknown group in white battle mech have just arrived at the venue. While breaking the news, another crazy scenario began playing out. Get into the conventional center and assist the other team. The whitish mech in the middle of the five that had just arrived, voiced out with a commanding tone. The MBO officers who were in the vicinity took notice of their arrival and actively approached the person reporting, voiced out with an apologetic tone. They are trying to get as many people as possible away. This can ruin our plans of causing a major catastrophe. Activate the nanites now. One of the figures commanded. It will take us a few minutes to do so manually since we are no longer using the timer, the figure disclosed. Speed things up and get it done as soon as possible. One of the dark figures commanded yet again. Yes, leader, we will do our best. The communication was cut off at this point. How in the world did they figure out our ploy? One of the dark figures voiced with a tone of bafflement. Do we have a mole? Chapter 1150 The Sticky Void. Grand Commander Cheyenne's original speed had been interfered with due to the laws of the Sticky Void. The unknown assailants were aware that someone as powerful as Grand Commander Cheyenne would be able to break out of the void due to his strength, but the hindrance from the void had delayed him quite a bit. This was why they had acted very quickly in removing him from the equation, as they had not expected someone this powerful to be on the ship. They were well aware of the power level of the ISOP candidates being unable to contend against the laws of the Sticky Void, so the plan looked solid without Grand Commander Cheyenne's existence. Phew! The captain of the assailants let out a sigh of relief after Grand Commander Cheyenne's disappearance. "Don't expect to be saved. We sent him very, very far from here," he stated with a strong tone afterwards. "Now send Gustav Crimson out if you all wish to survive," he added. Within the spacecraft, the candidates all stared at each other with conflicted looks as they struggled to come up with an answer to this unexpected predicament. Where is Gustav? I haven't seen him since. I think I saw him heading for the control room. We can't believe this maniacs. They are definitely lying. Gustav, who was stationed in the control room all this time, finally stepped out. Fizz shook a metallic shutter-like door slid open up ahead, and they watched as an irrefutably domineering presence walked towards them. "Ilgo," Gustav voiced out amidst the chatters and stares. We don't even know what they want with you. It definitely isn't anything good," Matilda, Angie, and Eldris voiced out simultaneously. "Send Gustav out now if you want to survive." The voice of the captain rang out once more. "Let us try to communicate with them first to find out why they want him," Falco suggested. Eldris tapped on some controls attached to the spacesuit, which had a space transmission function. Although everything on the spacecraft had stopped working, the spacesuit still functioned well. The only bad part was they couldn't use the spacesuit to communicate with others at very long distances. "Incoming transmission link," Rick stated from within the other spacecraft. From the kids?" "Oh, okay, accept it," the captain responded from above. Thuriss, a small static sound rang out before a masculine voice was heard. "Why do you lots want Gustav Crimson? Who do you think we are, and what do you think we do?" The captain questioned in response. "That is for you to reveal and for me to listen," Eldris replied with a calm tone. "You've got spunk, kid. We are intergalactic bounty hunters. We've got a contract for the Gustav Crimson's head," the captain replied while his dark tentacles kept waving. "So, you have plans of killing him?" Eldris inquired. "Yes, that is what having a contract for his head means," the captain replied with a weird tone. "Unfortunately, we will have to refuse," Eldris replied. "You kids don't have a choice. Either you give him to us, or you die here along with him," the captain stated. "You kids are lucky Rick doesn't want any collateral damage, which is why we are willing to save the rest of you. Should you kids decide to hand Gustav over, you get to live," he added. I am guessing we all perish in this place if we fail to find our way out?" Eldris questioned in a knowing manner. "Yes, the sticky void keeps you within, and then shrink everything within to molecular level till eventually you all vanish. So even if we chose not to do anything, Gustav Crimson will still perish here. We are just being generous right now," the captain revealed. Gasp within the ISOP spacecraft. The candidate gasped in terror upon the revelation of how dangerous the sticky void was. "Just as I thought," Gustav said internally as he slightly raised his left hand. Afterimages appeared with every movement, which was another insight Gustav took notice of upon their arrival here. He could already sense the difference and how their internal anatomy, as well as the anatomy of everything within this part of space, was slowly changing. Movement was immensely difficult because it felt like you had to travel longer to get to where you wanted to be, and Gustav sensed it would be even worse outside the spacecraft. "If you kids want to get out of here, I suggest you hand over Gustav Crimson," the captain stated once more. The spacecraft was currently unoperational since the pilots and navigators had tried their best in starting it, but nothing worked. If they had not knocked out the engines and energy systems of the spacecraft, the pilots would have been able to activate a jump that would get them out of the sticky void. Looks like they calculated properly before they made their move. Gustav could see that the intergalactic bounty hunters' actions were almost flawless to this point. "Why are you lots unaffected?" Eldris asked through the comms. "So long as we are inside this bubble, the laws of the sticky void will not apply to us. We are truly your only ticket out of here," the captain replied. "So, as long as we can get into that bubble, we're safe?" Eldris inquired. "Yes," the captain responded. "Please visit Panda and 0V1. All right then," Well, just switch spacecraft, Eldris stated. What do you mean by that? The captain questioned with a confused tone. It means we're not giving Gustav up, you punk, ass bitch. EES' loud voice suddenly rang out through the comms. Who is that vulgar creature? The captain sounded irritated as he spoke. Go ask your granny, motherfuck asterisk. Cost we about to send you on a one-way ticket to the afterlife, EE replied with a loud laughter which caused everyone in the vicinity to also begin laughing. The tensed atmosphere turned lighter upon EES' remark, causing everyone to relax a bit as they looked into the situation. I don't know about you guys, but I really want to whoop these bounty hunters' asses, EE stated. They're getting on my nerves too, calling us kids, Fildhor voiced from the side with an annoyed look. I'm in for the ass whooping, Teamy announced. This sounds fun. Count me in, Sheila giggled while voicing out. Count me in too, Angie yelled out. Me too, me too, me too. This created a domino effect in which everyone except for Gustav agreed to deal with the intergalactic bounty hunters. SS-3 officers landed hits on different body parts of the same mech again, causing it to fall to its knees, as another fist-size hole was left on its armor. The MBO officers were winning, but they had no idea this was a distraction. Pan DN-081 from in another part of the conventional center. 2 Jenxidus members with black masks squatted and hid themselves within the multitude of fans. Status report. Currently setting up the remote connector. One of them answered through their secret comms. How long? In 3 minutes it will be ready, and we will blast this place to kingdom come, the same masked member reported once more. On the ground they had a row of bar, like metal set on the ground. How is the signal looking? All good. It's almost set. From the looks of things, in 3 minutes the Jenxidus would manually detonate the nanites. Hold on for at least 3 minutes. Every Jenxidus member who had equipped the mech heard this announcement through the comms. At this point, 3 had been put out of commission, but the members were still within. Stay down or you will perish right now. One of the MYO officers voiced out to the mech on the ground in front of them. It is very unwise to engage us, knowing we do not care about the lives of anyone here. A voice was heard from the person within the mech. Huh? The MBO officers exclaimed while they moved closer. Detonate. The instant the MBO officers heard this, their eyes widened. Get D. Boom. The mech exploded in the next instant, engulfing a radius of 1,000 feet in an instant. Fuhum, a bluish sphere suddenly appeared around the flames, trapping them in a kind of bubble before they could spread any further. Unfortunately, some fans were caught in the range of the flames and were quickly turned into barbecue. Shit, one of the officers yelled out after witnessing this unfortunate sight. However, they didn't know that this wasn't the end. Detonate. Detonate. The other 2 that had been put down, as well, also detonated their mech. Boom. Boom. Ha! What was that? Gustav wondered out loud as he felt the vibration from the original dimensional frequency. His original body was still passed out in place, so he could sense his surroundings were in shambles. I can't waste any more time here. I need to get rid of this as soon as possible. Despite saying this, Gustav was still unsure of how to do this. What he was staring at was something that had no switches or buttons he could operate, so he was at a loss on how to deal with this. Chapter 1151. The instant he turned around, a punch was already headed for his face. Bang! EES' fist made contact with a crew member who the captain had grabbed with his dark tentacles and placed in front of him at the last instant. Bleared, the crew member vomited out blood within his spacesuit helmet, causing the internal glass walls to be stained. Oops! EE jumped back after missing the punch. Swai, a dark tentacles swept across the place he had just leapt away from, but it didn't stop and kept striking forward. Now that my dimensional abilities are no longer hindered, EE smiled while snapping his finger. Zush! A violet vortex suddenly appeared right in front of him, before the elongated tentacle could get to him. Contrary to EES expectations, the dark tentacle suddenly turned illusionary and phased through the vortex without getting teleported. EB realized this a bit too late as the tentacle had arrived right before his face. A figure suddenly appeared right beside EE and grabbed hold of the tentacle before it made contact with EE. Aeldris. EE beamed with joy. Aeldris nodded at him before voicing out, "Color absorption." A strange phenomenon suddenly occurred where the black from the tentacle drained at quick pace. Fwy, the captain, quickly tried pulling the tentacle back, but it was too late. The color had drained completely, and it looked like a piece of paper. What in the world? The captain could no longer feel any energy from that particular tentacle, and could not control it as well. Half of Aeldris' right arm had turned dark like the tentacle color, and he raised it slightly. The darkened part of his arm turned illusionary for a bit before returning to normal. "Thank you for this," Aeldris stated. "Let's get him," EE yelled out before charging forward. "I will teach you kids a lesson," the captain yelled out, as well as more tentacles shot out of his back while he charged forward as well. Within the spacecraft, everywhere had turned chaotic as the candidates battled with the crew members. Angie tried not to rip the place apart with her speed as he sped forward while grabbing the bodies of the crew members and slamming them against the walls. Bang, bang, bang. The sounds of collisions rang out across the place. The spacecraft, which was larger than a football pitch, vibrated intensely as the candidates battled against the bounty hunters. Within one of the corridors, a man with black scarf covering half his face was moving forward at quick pace when two substitutes suddenly arrived before him. "You must be one of the crew members. Let's get him." The male and female candidates charged forward instantly. "I didn't want to hurt you kids before, but now you leave me no choice," Rick voiced as he slowly pulled the scarf off his face. Suzuinian, a bright light was instantly emitted from the side of his face as the two who charged at him displayed expressions of horror in the next instant. In another part of the spacecraft, Falco moved around with a dark burning flame on his forehead. "I told you I didn't want this," Falco voiced out like he was talking to himself, which made the crew members around him display weird looks. "No, you come out and take the wheel. Bastard, I don't want this," Falco kept speaking while moving forward. The crew members charged at him with weapons and all sort of supernatural abilities. Falco turned his face to the side, and the burning dark flame on his forehead increased. The crew members who happened to be closest to him fell to their knees and began writhing in pain. "Arf, it burns. Kyr, make it stop. Make it stop." They yelled and rolled on the floor in pain, while begging with tears flowing from their eyes. Please visit Panda N0V1. Co. And the others who were also charging forward initially stopped in place with looks of confusion on their faces. They stared at their subordinates on the floor and still couldn't understand what was happening. Their bodies looked okay, and physically it seemed like they were unharmed, so they were at loss as to what was going on. Fine. Just this one time," Falco said out loud, once more causing them to wonder if he had a few screws loose in his head. "Good my king, relish the feeling of darkness." Dark Falco voiced in his head. "Shut up. Don't say none of that." After voicing this out, a massive dark scythe appeared in Falco's grasp while he swung forward. Swywilsh, the entire spacecraft, instantly vibrated immensely as a large cut tore through the walls and left holes within. "Shit, that was too much," Falco voiced out, while piles on torn-up bodies could be seen scattered across the place. Fullwood, a suction force came from the side of the spacecraft, which now had a long, spacious cut, but Falco was unaffected due to the spacesuit. However, even if he was to get sucked out, the bubble covering the spacecraft would still stop him from drifting through space. As expected, the spacecraft isn't going to hold with how much damage they are causing. Gustav watched from his seating position with God eyes activated. He could see every corner of the spacecraft, and it was almost as if he was witnessing everything going on like he was right there. A container holding popcorn was stationed in between his laps as he occasionally grabbed some and stuffed his mouth full. "Oh, those substitutes are pretty strong too," Gustav made another remark as he took note of a group of substitutes that arrived at the upper part of the spacecraft with coordination. They blasted their way through a group of crew members who were using spatial bombs. Fortunately, the spatial bombs didn't make contact with any of them, or their body parts would have been forcefully teleported to different locations in space, which of course meant instant death. Some of the enemy's crew have abilities while some only have good weapons, Gustav analyzed as he kept eating his popcorn. Out of the 109 crew members, only around 13 of them are truly threats. "I don't think the whole group will come out of this unscathed," the system said internally. "Watch the corridor before the control room. We're about to have our first casualty," Gustav announced to the system. Since the system was within him, it could obviously see everything as well, and instantly understood what Gustav was talking about. Just as he had mentioned, 2 candidates disappeared. That is the most dangerous person on the spacecraft right now. Even more dangerous than the captain, Gustav voiced before stuffing his mouth full once more. If he joins hands with the captain, EE and Eldris will have it more difficult up there. The system stated as well. He won't be able to. He is about to make contact with Elevra is a bit further away, Gustav replied. "Wait, you are right. I don't sense any worry from you. You truly don't intend to help them?" The system questioned. "No, I won't be interfering in the battle. They can handle themselves." Gustav sounded like a proud father as he voiced with a smile. Gustav wasn't bothered with sitting this out after witnessing how powerful his teammates had become. He was truly proud of them, especially seeing as they had new abilities that could easily level the spacecraft if they weren't holding back. That spacecraft won't last for long, so we'll have to look for another means of leaving the sticky void. Or an idea suddenly flashed in Gustav's mind as he stared at a particular part of the spacecraft. "Yeah, we could use that." Gustav smirked upon sighting what he was looking for. Atop the spacecraft, EE and Eldris had successfully dealt a lot of blows to the captain, who happened to be very durable. However, it was quite obvious that both of them had the upper hand. "Color absorb ion," Eldris voiced out once more as he appeared on the left of the captain while his hand was directly placed upon another tentacle. "You bastard!" the captain yelled while another tentacle appeared from behind Eldris and stabbed forward. A vortex appeared right in between, and the tentacle phased in before appeared in front of the captain's chest. His eyes widened as he quickly turned the tentacle illusionary, causing it to phase through him instead of piercing through. Eldris, who was by the side, threw a punch at the captain's face, causing him to get blasted backwards. Once more, as his face displayed a look of fury. A Novi one multiple dark tentacles shot out of the captain's back while his body was traveling in midair, and they all stabbed towards Eldris. Eldris disappeared into a vortex in the next instant, arriving behind the captain alongside. Foop. They both threw out fierce punches at the captain's blind spots, which he realized too late. Bang. Bang. "Sorry guys, privilege tiers are still unavailable. Recently lost a lot of words due to some situations." Chapter 1152 Foop. They both threw out fierce punches at the captain's blind spots, which he realized too late. Bang. Bang. The combined forces from both punches sent him reeling across the air in the opposite direction once more as he puked out blood. Thrara, the captain, quickly stabbed his dark tentacles into the top of the spacecraft to stop the movement of his body. Blood kept trailing down his mouth within the helmet. He glared forward with a look of anguish at his opponents. These kids are no ordinary kids. He internally came to this realization. EE and Eldris were about to charge forward once more when a figure suddenly appeared from an elevated stand that brought him to the top of the spacecraft. Unlike the others, This figure was clad in red spacesuit and had a feminine build. However, it was impossible to see her facial looks due to the darkness of her helmet. "Tara, you came at the right time," the captain stated grudgingly. "Captain Gantz, how did you get so injured by 2 kids?" she questioned while moving towards him. "They're not ordinary kids. If you underestimate them, you will come to regret it gravely," the captain replied with a strong tone. "Sure, oldie," she said after arriving before him. And Eldris glanced at each other before nodding. Fish, they both charged forward once more. However, the moment they took a step forward, the newcomer raised both her hands. "Sharayueth." A sudden wave of circular energy instantly covered up the vicinity as the crew member who had just arrived vanished. "The hell?" voiced with a shocked tone as the surroundings turned a little darker. Eldris could feel a certain chill in the air, which caused his hairs to stand on hair. Sin, the female figure, suddenly appeared behind him with a blade 2 inches away and about to slice his head off. Mouth widened as he turned to the side. It seemed like time had paused as the captain also appeared in front of Eldris at this instant, stabbing tentacles towards his ribs. "Shit. What? They disappeared?" "Yes, and we can't make contact with them." "How is that even possible?" "We don't understand as well. Grand Commander Cheyenne is off comms too. How long has it been?" "For days." "For days? You waited 4 days to tell me?" "Young miss, you dimwit." A conversation ensued between Miss Amy and an MBO agent that came to report an issue with her. They were currently at the MBO tower, and fury had began to build up within Miss Amy. "Did you know about it too?" She turned to glare at Gradier Xanatus, who seemed to be glued in place from pressure. "I had no idea as well," he responded while shaking his head. "Why did you wait so long to tell us you?" Miss Amy's anguish was starting to twist the air in the room. "Young miss, we should be more concerned about where they are and how to find them," Gradier Xanatus quickly voiced out before her fury would turn the officer into mincemeat. Someone could get obliterated from her fury alone, and there was nothing the MBO would be able to do about it. Miss Amy immediately calmed down afterwards and turned to stare at Gradier Xanatus. "We already have a lot on our plate, as it is. I wonder which idiot is behind this. I will rip them to pieces," Miss Amy stated with a strong tone. "It might not even be what you think. There are a myriad of possibilities," Gradier Xanatus said with a calming tone. "Where was their last notable location before they vanished?" Gradier Xanatus asked the officer. The officer, who had a device in his grasp, operated it, and a holographic screen appeared. "Let's go," Miss Amy commanded while turned around to head for the exit. "Huh?" Gradier Xanatus stared at her from his position with a look of confusion. "I don't know how to use that thing, so follow me," Miss Amy voiced before she resumed her movement. Just like that, Gradier Xanatus was still wrapping his head around how powerful she was as he quickened his pace to catch up with her. "Are you not going to make use of your original self?" he inquired after catching up with Miss Amy. "Pa, MD, a Novi, 1-inch what if that I is responsible?" Gradier Xanatus asked once more. "It isn't. I have met enough dumb people to know this isn't related to that. My intuition tells me a stupid person is responsible for this," Miss Amy voiced solemnly before grabbing Gradier Xanatus and speeding out of the building. "And I won't spare them," she added as they disappeared into the skies at high speed. Fulham, all Gradier Xanatus noticed was they had somehow arrived in deep space in just a matter of moments. "She's insanely fast," he yelled internally. Breaking news. The ISOP candidate spacecraft is reported missing. The MBO are currently doing their best to locate it. News was being broadcasted across the world. On the Earth, the ISOP candidates left 9 days ago. Meanwhile, in the sticky void, the candidates were sure they had only been gone for 5 days. The sticky void. "Yeah, it's just right after that door. There are 2 crew members there," Gustav voiced through the comms. "Hold on, there's someone coming your way." Gustav's tone turned a bit worried. Teamy, go meet up with Finks at the engine room. You're the closest to her, he added. Dash, I'm a little busy. I'm sure you can see, Teamy replied through the comms. Leave it to Falco, Gustav instructed. Dash, Falco isn't. He's coming up behind you. Leave the enemy right now and go back Finks up. Teamy stopped arguing at this point, and Gustav could see he had suddenly left the enemy and began running away. The crew member was baffled and wanted to go after him until he felt a dark presence in the vicinity. His being was glued to place, and in the next few moments, he felt cold hands crawling all over the back of his neck. How do you wish to die? A cold voice that caused his heart to nearly jump out of his chest rang out. The fingers reached the top of his head and grabbed onto it firmly from behind. I asked you a question. How do you wish to die? Meanwhile, at the engine room, Finks had broken into it and beaten up the two crew members within. Just as she was about to pull a glowing gray stone out of a storage unit in the engine room, a large presence appeared behind her. You are not taking that. The massive figure voiced out while throwing an attack forward. At this same instant, Teamy arrived. Pull it oit right now, Gustav instructed as soon as the presence got distracted by Teamy's arrival. Finks grabbed hold of the glowing gray stone at this point while the dark figure reached out to grab her as well. Pa! Teamy slapped the hand of the figure before he could get hold of Finks. Hiya! Finks cried out as she pulled the gray stone from the storage unit. You little bitch! The figure yelled the instant she pulled it out. The entire vicinity suddenly turned weird as the sound of a powering down machine rang out. Good job, Gustav praised over the comms. Outside the spacecraft, the bubble covering them had holes appearing over as it shrieked before eventually disappearing. E.E. and Eldris, who had been getting their asses handed to them since the arrival of the female figure, paused. Everyone paused at this point as they felt a certain way. Moving their arms created afterimages and was even more strenuous. E.E. Eldris, you two can go all out now. Don't worry about the spacecraft getting destroyed, Gustav voiced through the comms. E.E. and Eldris turned to stare at each other as wide grins appeared on their faces. Go all out and show them. Show them they made a deadly mistake by messing with the wrong crew, Gustav voiced was like fuel as E.E. and Eldris unleashed their full bloodline energies. Fume with the sudden outburst, despite the restriction of the sticky void, since the bubble had been compromised, they still caused the entire spacecraft to quake intensely. The captain and female figure beside him had widened eyes as they stared at the two. They were holding back. This question rang through their minds like alarm bells. Color grading. Restructuring. As Eldris let out this whisper, the world around them suddenly went from its present state to colorless, and then from colorless to a spectrum of colors. He stretched forth his hand at the two hostiles whose eyes were still widened in shock and fear. Monster? Chapter 11, 53. She stretched forth his hand at the two hostiles whose eyes were still widened in shock and fear. Monster! The captain yelled out just before his figure melted. Purpley, dimension of colors, the spectrum of light formed walls on both sides of the enemies. They tried to escape, but they couldn't, and in a couple of moments the walls of colorful lights boxed them in completely. The captain and the female figure melted like butter and turned into a puddle of color that got absorbed into the walls. Eldris snapped his finger, and the walls disappeared in the next instant. Damn, you didn't even leave some for me, E.E. exclaimed with an expression of disbelief. Sorry, I got a little too carried away. Eldris displayed an apologetic smile as he voiced out. Phew, he whistled as he was still astonished by the display he had just witnessed. There was a large hole atop the spacecraft at this point, as Eldris' ability had affected it. Meanwhile, Gustav had stood up from his watching point and was currently atop the ISOP spacecraft. Zing, a head-shaped but transparent item appeared before him. The item had a fist-sized gleam of light within and floated before Gustav as the light occasionally flickered. "Get the stone," Gustav commanded. The sacred jewel floated a bit forward and left afterimages behind as it only moved a couple of feet forward. Zizi in its entirety glowed intensely as a bolt of light shot forth from it. It pierced through the laws of the sticky void and soon arrived before the intergalactic bounty hunter spacecraft. In the next instant it disappeared, and a glowing grayish stone appeared before the sacred jewel. Hands grew out of the sacred jewel's glassy circumference, and it grabbed onto the stone before flying towards Gustav. Gustav received the stone from the sacred jewel and nodded. "Good job," he said before bringing an energy crystal out of his storage device and handing it to the sacred jewel. The sacred jewel seemed happy as the light within flickered even more before it disappeared into thin air. "With this, there shouldn't be any more problems," Gustav voiced out as he held the glowing gray stone before his face. "Do you guys need help destroying the spacecraft, or should I do it myself?" Gustav voiced through the comms as he stretched out his right arm. "Dash, don't you dare, Gus. Dash, we're having a lot of fun here. Dash, we'll do it ourselves." Gustav chuckled as he heard their responses. He slowly lowered his arm. "You guys have less than a minute to clean things up," he stated. In that same moment, a purplish beam tore through the spacecraft from within, splitting the entire thing in two. "Oh, you," Gustav exclaimed as he swerved towards the right. The remnant of the destructive beam blasted past his initial position. "Be careful with that Alevra," Gustav said through the comms. "You gave us permission to go all out. Don't complain," she responded. Gustav clicked his tongue in pity for the opponent she had just obliterated. The sticky void laws were causing them to shrink and reducing the output of their abilities, yet the initial ability was still so powerful. Gustav moved back into the ISOP spacecraft and headed to the engine room with the stone in his grasp. "I will activate the bubble when everyone gets back in the spacecraft," he announced. In a couple of seconds, a blinding glows began to appear in different spots within the ISOP spacecraft. The candidates were reappearing one after the other, and from the transparent view of the walls, a violet gate could be seen standing atop what was left of the intergalactic bounty hunter spacecraft. When the last ISOP candidates phased into the violet-colored gate, the gate which seemed to be in the form of a person disappeared as well. The remnant of a once mighty and menacing-looking spacecraft could be seen drifting into space along with its multiple disjointed parts. "We're back in Gus," Eldris voiced through the comms. "Good. It's now time to activate the stone," Guziev replied through the comms. "Pilots, prepare to restart the engine," Gustav voiced through the comms. The pilots in the control room replied immediately, but they were still reeling in shock from the kids handling this intergalactic bounty hunters that had handled the situation. In a couple of moments, a milky-colored bubble began forming around their spacecraft. "Please visit Panda N0V1. Co-M dash, hey, I don't feel restricted anymore. Dash, me too. I no longer feel sluggish. Dash, I've grown back to my original height." The ISOP candidates began to voice out their observations. "Panda N0V1. Come, good job out there, you all." Gustav commended them, and they bursted out in uproar. "Yeah, we did it." They seemed proud of themselves, although some had disheartened looks, and Gustav was instantly able to tell that these were close friends of the casualties that had fallen from their side. It was absolutely normal for them to have a couple of casualties, and there was nothing anyone could do about it. Their numbers had lessened from 50 to 44. On the bright side, there wasn't a lot of casualties, however. Every single casualty was a substitute member. Gustav wasn't too surprised about this, since the main members were way more powerful after the Oasis. Trin, the pilots had restarted the engines of the spacecraft, and they worked perfectly within the bubble. "He must be the one the captain was talking about," Gustav voiced out as he approached a person kneeling on the floor bound by dark, glowing chains. "Yeah, he is Rick, the co-captain," Eldris replied. Gustav arrived in front of Rick, who raised his head to stare at him with a blank look. The scarf covering part of his face, It's because that power activates when it's revealed, right? Gustav questioned already. He already knew the answer, since he witnessed the whole saga. That's why we had to leave it covered, or he would trap anyone he stared here in that unknown realm, Timmy replied this time. You are Gustav Crimson. All of you are true monsters, Rick voiced with a regretful tone. He couldn't imagine how powerful Gustav was currently after witnessing the strength of his peers. Their data had been completely wrong because it gave info of the candidate's strength from months back. They had calculated their current strength based on that, and it caused their failure. You wanted to spare everyone else. And only let your crew members kill me. I commend you for that, but who sent you guys after me? Gustav questioned as their spacecraft began to move. The group known as Jinxidus gave us a contract for your head over 4 months ago. It was good profit, and the captain couldn't turn it down despite your status, Rick explained. I see, but I am sure you lots are aware the Jinxidus got taken down. Why still do the job? Gustav inquired. Because the contracted protocols lets us get payment regardless so long as the job is done, Rick responded. I see. Gustav nodded in understanding. Can we kill him now? He is responsible for murdering Debbie. A substitute appeared from the side while voicing out. Without explaining, Gustav could tell Debbie was one of the substitutes who met her demise at Rick's hand. Hold on, can you bring them back? Gustav questioned Rick. Once anyone has been sucked into the sixth realm, they can never return. Rick shook his head. Oh, I guess this is where you meet your end then, Gustav stated, and was about moving away when a sudden presence caused the spacecraft to be hooked in place. Seeing the spacecraft had just disappeared from the sticky void a while ago through a teleportation that caused them to appear right in front of the Orion 2 gateway. This was the same gateway they flew into and ended up in the diminishing void almost a day ago. The instant they reappeared here, the bubbles surrounding the ISOP spacecraft disappeared. The pilots were initially on tenterhooks on whether or not to use the gateway again. After making the decision to head to the third gateway point, which would cause more delays in their travel, they decided to move. However, at this instant, the spacecraft paused in space as it found itself unable to move. Gustav and the others within the spacecraft had darkened faces as they felt an unfathomable force descend upon the spacecraft, pausing them in place. What is going on again? A candidate voiced out with a tone of terror. What they were all feeling at this moment was something they were sure they wouldn't be able to fight with. Zetian, a whitish figure, suddenly appeared right in front of the spacecraft with flowing robes. She looked like an ethereal cosmic entity that was far above the level of mortal men. Her eyes looked sharp as she peered directly into the spacecraft, like she was looking for someone. Miss Amy, Gustav voiced with a tone of surprise. Check out this WSA story. I am no longer human. Add to library and support it. Chapter 1154. Sure eyes looked sharp as she peered directly into the spacecraft, like she was looking for someone. Miss Amy, Gustav voiced with a tone of surprise. Miss Amy, who happened to be the ethereal-looking deity that took everyone by surprise and caused the spacecraft to halt in space. She floated closer to the spacecraft, made use of her finger to draw a rectangular draw on the wall. Why, Miss Amy instantly moved into the spacecraft along with another person who seemed to be behind her all this time. Are you okay, kids? Miss Amy questioned while floating towards Gustav. Dash, who is she? Dash, is she? Some candidates had no idea who Miss Amy was, while some had looks of astonishment and realization. We're fine, Gustav replied with a smile as she arrived before him. That's a relief, Miss Amy said while ruffling Gustav's hair. Yo, it's Miss Amy, he voiced from the side as the others gathered around her with smiles as well. Dash, I heard she's a goddess. Dash, yeah man, she created a whole planet with life. Dash, damn, just how powerful is she? The candidates discussed about Miss Amy in the background. What are you doing here? Gustav questioned. Your spacecraft was reported missing, Miss Amy replied, and it has already been a week. Gradiers and Natus added from behind. What? Gustav wasn't the only one who voiced out in shock. The others were stupefied as well. We've only been gone for a day, Falco stated from the side. We set out to find your spacecraft on the 4th day from Earth, and it has been 3 days since then, making it a total of 1 week, Gradiers and Natus explained. That would mean the sticky void also affects time. Gustav came to this conclusion. It does. Your atoms and everything within shrinks, including time. Since the laws of the sticky void shrinks time, therefore, making it slower. The original time outside the sticky void moves at a normal pace. Rick, who was still in a kneeling position, explained. Sticky void? You all were trapped in the sticky void. Gradier's and Natus' eyes widened as he questioned. Yeah, for almost a day, Gustav replied. How did you even manage to get out? He was even more shocked after the confirmation. We just did. Gustav wasn't ready to go over the details. Is this person amongst the people responsible? Miss Amy asked while moving to the side and lifting Rick. Miss Amy, don't. Gustav was about to warn her about the scarf covering part of Rick's face, but was too late. Miss Amy immediately pulled it down after lifting Rick. Oh, half of your face is the gateway to another realm, Miss Amy uttered with a look of interest. She's unaffected, the others in the vicinity said with looks of astonishment. Rick was just as shocked himself. The moment a person stared at this part of his face, they would instant get sucked into the realm. This is not enough to stop me from obliterating you for putting Gustav in harm's way, Miss Amy stated as her fingers wrapped around Rick's neck. Hold on. Gustav quickly pulled Rick from Miss Amy's grasp before she could send him to the afterlife. I still have something to do with him before he dies. Gustav quickly wrapped the scarf back around the half of Rick's face which held an unknown realm. Which is? Miss Amy questioned. It's private, Gustav replied before dragging Rick away. He headed towards the room area amidst the stares of everyone and soon was out of sight. They wondered what was on Gustav's mind, but couldn't figure it out. Oh, yeah, he didn't come out at all during the ruckus. Gustav recalled something as he arrived before the room door. Thush, the door slid open, and he walked right in with Rick still in his grasp. There he was, floating above a bed with a look of serenity, while his forehead gleamed a bright green light. It was Endrick, who had been totally missing during the entire battle that went down. Gustav was well aware that he was in the room, but didn't bother to disturb him, knowing that the others could handle the problem. Endrick seemed to be in a state of trance, and Gustav was well aware that he was probably doing something important. Another monster, Rick muttered the instant Gustav dropped him. He could already sense a mystical and quite unfathomable energy from Endrick as he floated above one of the beds with his eyes closed. Why did you bring me here? Why not just let them kill me? Rick questioned. Don't be so hasty to die before you meet your end. Be of good use to me first, Gustav responded as his eyes turned cold. What are you? Rick, who had been calm since the start, couldn't help but feel a little chill upon meeting Gustav's gaze. Mental manipulation has been activated, memories siphoning, Gustav muttered as he suddenly reached out and grabbed Rick's head. Please visit Panda N0VE1. Ugh. Rick groaned in pain as a searing pain tore through his mind. Gustav was now able to use memory siphoning without having to take a bloodline-boosting drug for the damaged mental manipulation bloodline like he used to in the past. He could now use it on command. Rick memories began to flow into his mind at a very quick pace. Unlike the last time in Arabia City, where he was still a little slower in siphoning memories, this time was way quicker. In a couple of minutes, Gustav had siphoned up to 2 years' worth of memories and kept going. Kyr! Rick kept yelling in agony as he felt like his brain was getting split apart. Make it stop. Erf! He kept screaming in pain. The scarf had fallen off his face at this point due to all the shaking, but this didn't deter Gustav in the slightest as he kept at it. PN0V1 com. It turned out that Thea was what he was going to be facing. Demon. An hour later, Gustav let go of Rick S. head, and his body fell limply to the floor of the spacecraft. Blood was seeping out of his right eye, which was the only eye he had, as well as his left nose and side of his mouth. They were 2 hover cars speeding across the northeast streets, and within each of them, there were 4 occupants. With their speed, they would be able to arrive within the outskirts of the city in a couple of minutes. Ding, 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 ding. Alarms suddenly began blaring off within both hover cars as the security system sensed an hostile approach. What is that? Shit, it is an MBO officer. Activate the weapon system. The Janxidus members in the second hover car voiced out frantically. Alevra, who approached from above, could see cannons phasing out of the hover cars. Bam, ting, ting, ting. Projectiles began shooting towards her in the next instant. Sweeve, Fwub. Alevra gracefully swerved from side to side across the air, dodging the projectiles. One of them predicted her movement and fired out an explosive. The tarmac, who was a beautiful and muscular-looking lady with a scar ripping from her left cheek to chin, stood in place with a scowl on her face. Deactivate the barrier. The tarmac instructed. Deactivate the barrier. Sir Lucius yelled out the command. In the next instant, a vibrating sound rang out like something powering down. And a dome that surrounded this part of the city turned visible for an instant before disappearing. Thump bang. The tarmac leapt and landed right in front of Endrick. Endrick, who was less than 6 feet tall, was at least 3 heads shorter than the tarmac. I shall inspect it now, she voiced out before moving past him. Be quick before it reawakens, Endrick advised. The massive creature, which was dark brownish in color with a mixture of furs and scales on different areas of its body, was wrapped by these massive chains. The tarmac touched a part of its body and nodded her head. Open the gates, she said before turning around. Follow me, she instructed Endrick while proceeding to walk forward. Endrick picked up the end of the chain and began dragging the creature forward once more. Finally, he heaved a sigh of relief as he followed the tarmac into the city. Hashtag, 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 hashtag. Endrick, who was less than 6 feet tall, was at least 3 heads shorter than the tarmac. I shall inspect it now, she voiced out before moving past him. Be quick before it reawakens, Endrick advised. The massive creature, which was dark brownish in color with a mixture of furs and scales on different areas of its body, was wrapped by these massive chains. The tarmac touched a part of its body and nodded her head. Open the gates, she said before turning around. Follow me, she instructed Endrick while proceeding to walk forward. Endrick picked up the end of the chain and began dragging the creature forward once more. Finally, he heaved a sigh of relief as he followed the tarmac into the city. Chapter 1155, Do Not Purchase, yet we're 1 week behind travel schedule. This means we will arrive at Galaxy Valentia days after ISOP has begun, Eldris disclosed. That's bad. You kids will be automatically disqualified if you arrive there any later than a day before the competition begins, Gradius Anatus voiced out. Chatter, chatter, chatter. There was instant panic amongst the candidates upon the revelation of this new information. What do we do? Angie questioned from the side. Before Gustav could voice any response, Miss Amy figure glowed up as she floated off the spacecraft floor. Gustav stared at her. I will take care of it, she said before flying towards one of the corridors. In the next instant, Miss Amy had arrived outside the spacecraft, which was currently moving at a crazy speed. It left a glowing milky trail as it cut through space faster than a shooting star. For Miss Amy wasted no time in following after it and caught up in a moment. She maintained the same speed with the spacecraft, which was many times faster than the speed of light. Her entire body suddenly lit up with a purplish glow. The glow extended from her figure to the spacecraft, and in the next instant, the entire spacecraft had been covered with this purplish aura. "Give me navigations," Miss Amy voiced out as she increased her speed. Within the spacecraft, they hadn't expected the speed of the craft to suddenly increase by a notch, and it took them by surprise. Some of them were sent flying in separate directions from the suddenly speed and activated their spacesuit once more to help them gain balance. "That's why she is the only woman I will ever call master." A grin appeared on Gustav's face as he voiced out. Without Miss Amy's presence, they were totally bummed out, and he was sure he wouldn't be able to come up with a way to salvage the situation. Fortunately, she had truly appeared at a time where she was needed. With this, their journey would be faster, and they could make it to Flalentia Galaxy even faster. The only issue was, it didn't seem like Miss Amy was likely to slow down. "Fry, oh sheet!" he exclaimed as space began to crack right before their very eyes. Lines like broken glass spread across space from what they could see within the spacecraft. "Her speed is causing a rift to open up within space," Falco stated. Just as he had said, up ahead more lines had been torn in space, and soon a rift appeared. FYI, Miss Amy wasted no time in dragging them in along with herself. The soon entered a world of purple with intense space turbulence, pulling and trying to rip everything to shreds. Miss Amy was not affected in the slightest. The purplish aura spreading from her figure to the spacecraft also made sure Gustav and the others were unaffected as well. Soon they reappeared in another part of space, and Miss Amy still hadn't slowed down. She kept charging forward with intensity. Within the control room. She has taken the piloting work off our hands. At least we get to arrive their days before the competition begins. The rifts she keeps opening are equivalent to the dimensional gateways, but more chaotic. She is too powerful. We are not even affected in the slightest. The pilots and navigators couldn't help but express their shock as the spacecraft glided through space with the help of Miss Amy. "What about the Grand Commander?" Matilda questioned. "What about him?" Gustav said with an unbothered expression. "Shouldn't we be worried?" Matilda inquired. "That's an alpha-ranked mixed blood. There is nothing to be worried about," Gustav replied. "The old man will find his way," Sheila added from the side. Matilda felt that since even the old man great-granddaughter was unbothered, there was no need for her to worry. Everyone else strapped in as Miss Amy became the new pilot and flew them away. Sure. We've rounded up 6 of them on this part too, Eldris replied. Anytime. He spotted a Jenxidus member hiding in the midst of the slum dwellers, he would send them to Gustav. Everyone had a GPS indicator on them that showed the rest of the teammates where they are in real time. This made it possible for to easily open up vortexes wherever Gustav was. The instant Gustav saw a vortex and figures dressed like slum dwellers, he was instantly able to tell that these figures were Jenxidus members. In another part of the slums, a figure clad in MBO outfit could be seen flying above with a purplish aura covering her figure. "Vera, on your 3 o'clock, 200 meters away. There's a group of them trying to get away," Alevra disclosed as she flew across the city. Matilda and Vera were busy handling a group of Jenxidus members initially, but upon Alevra's message, she began heading in the direction disclosed. Matilda was left to handle 4 Jenxidus members alone. Fortunately, there was no bloodline dampening beacon around, so she wasn't restricted in the slightest. While Alevra flew across the slums, she spotted 2 more groups trying to escape. At this point, everyone was preoccupied with handling one Jenxidus member or the other, so Alevra had no choice but to swoop down herself. "Step on it. Let's get out of here," and rendezvous with the others back in one of the bases outside the city. One of the members yelled out as the hover car sped through the street. They were 2 hover cars speeding across the northeast streets, and within each of them, there were 4 occupants. With their speed, they would be able to arrive within the outskirts of the city in a couple of minutes. Ding, 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 ding. Alarms suddenly began blaring off within both hover cars as the security system sensed an hostile approach. What is that? Shit, it is an MBO officer. Activate the weapons system. The Jinxidus members in the second hover car voiced out frantically. Elevra, who approached from above, could see cannons phasing out of the hover cars. Bam! Ting! 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 Projectiles began shooting towards her in the next instant. Sweeve! Fwub! Elevra gracefully swerved from side to side, across the air, dodging the projectiles. One of them predicted her movement and fired out an explosive. Elevra found herself heading into the sight of this explosive and flicked her wrist. Why, a purplish storm blasted forth from her hand, slamming into the explosive and causing a massive blast in midair. Boom! Shockwaves spread across the vicinity, blasting the hover cars off the road. One was blasted straight across the air and slammed into a high-rise-like building by the side. Bang! Chapter 1156, Don't Purchase Yet. Is everyone okay? Endrick felt a bit silly as he noticed their weird stares. He chuckled a bit after seeing Endrick's concerned expression. The kid's personality truly underwent a 180. It's just Miss Amy, no worries, Gustav stated from the side. Endrick realized he must have missed something at this point. There was a little situation while we were busy, Husarius voiced in his head. A little situation? Endrick still has a slyly confused expression as he moved to a corner to sit. Hubby, I'll fill you in, Sheila voiced while hopping towards Endrick heartily. Gustav remained seated in place with an unbothered expression after she left his side. She acts like a kid, but within, she hides her true personality. Gustav took note. Well, I wouldn't say hide. This is still her personality, or a side of it she chose to show, while she chose to hide the other side. The system responded internally. I don't sense any nefarious intent, so I know she's not a wolf in sheep clothing, but she is hiding something for sure, Gustav said internally. That is indeed true. She is just like Endrick. Both their potential far surpasses their peers. Endrick is higher, but she is not far off either. The system stated, looks like deciding not to kill Endrick worked out for the best. You get to have someone that loyal and powerful on your side. He is already amongst the top in terms of strength at a young age, truly an unmatched potential. This made Gustav think, I am the outworldly. My little brother was also blessed with such strength. Is there a force at play here? Their journey continued on, and the candidates engaged in all sorts of activities on their way to planet Osius. They had also passed by many planets, gone through multiple rifts, phased through a sun, and shattered a star for Miss Amy's speed. None of these orbital bodies managed to slow Miss Amy down in the slightest, and they were soon closing in on Flolentia Galaxy. While this was happening, Miss Amy's real body, which held around 80% of her strength, was currently in deep space. Her eyes were gleaming with a menacing purplish light, as a whitish energy surrounded her. As well, she stabbed her hands forward and pulled sideways with her fingers like she was trying to rip something open. HNNGHH. She groaned as it seemed difficult to separate what she was trying to. It looked like her hands were just stretched in front of her, holding on to nothing, but in actuality, this wasn't the case. Space began to twist and turn as powerful winds began to blast out of a small tear that suddenly appeared while Miss Amy was still trying to rip hole through space. The separation finally began to happen as a reddish tear increased, and Miss Amy's fingers could be seen within trying to rip it apart even more. Pa and Dan. 0V1. C0 Ma wave of energy suddenly blasted forth from the tear, sending Miss Amy flying for thousands of miles in deep space. The tear she had ripped in space repaired itself very quickly after she had gotten blasted backwards. Miss Amy stabilized herself after flying backwards for a period of time and peered forward with a suspicious gaze. "I haven't used half my full strength in any situation for a long time," she mouthed before flying forward. "If I was to create another planet, I still wouldn't expend 10% of the energy within me. But this—" Miss Amy raised her palm to stare at it. Her fingers were scalded, whereas a sun 4 times larger than Earth's was unable to cause her to sweat. The scald slowly disappeared, and she returned to normal in nearly an instant, but nevertheless she was surprised. Whatever we're dealing with is not something that can be taken care of Earth alone. Heading to ISOP was a good plan. It would be better for the Alliance to be informed, so they can prepare themselves, Miss Amy stated as her figure sent forth an outburst of white energy. "I won't stop trying to expose their existence," she said before stabbing forward with her fingers once more. In a known part of space, massive discs-like structures could be spotted in different colors floating around. It was a very beautiful sight, as this part of space had wondrous colors and constellation of stars in the distance that brightened it up. There wasn't a sun like Earth, but there was fluorescent-colored star in the western part of space, shining a blinding light across that illuminated every area the massive disk structures were situated. It was a truly beautiful sight to behold, and occasionally spacecraft would fly by towards the southern area. There happened to be a 9-disc structured orbital body in the southern area. Every disc looked copper-like in color, and the top one happened to gleam the brightest like a golden deity. Please visit Panda N0V1 Co. And the discs were all aligned in a line-up format from the bottom to the top. The 9th disc structure was as large as the entire circular surface of Earth, and it also happened to be the smallest amongst all 9. Spacecraft bearing the emblems of planetary bodies would occasionally enter the atmosphere of the last disk and land there. However, that was only after they were screened by a blanketing barrier that surrounded the 9 disks. 3 new spacecraft happened to have arrived at the same time just after 2 arrived some time ago and flew towards the 9th disk as well. At this same moment, a spacecraft approached from the west with a blue and red color. It bore a familiar emblem on its massive body. Just like the 3 that had arrived, it was also given access to the 9th layer of the disks. Within a space station situated right outside the gravitational center of the 9-layered disk structures, a group of people in spacesuit gave reports about the arrivals. Planet Gundabalt has arrived. SSSC. ES eyes turned bloodshot as the violet glow that coated his fingertips turned to red. Deep in space, a collapsing red vortex appeared beside a satellite which was shooting down green beams towards the Earth. The vortex was not even 1/4 of the satellite, but the instant it appeared to devour and suck everything in its vicinity towards it. A barrier appeared around the satellite as a security measure, but this still wasn't enough to stop the collapsing vortex. It sucked the barrier along with the satellite into it in a couple of seconds and closed up. It reappeared, once more beside another one, in a few moments. We are calling for space check to take care of the issue. Gustav could hear one of the commander's voice through the comms. There will be no need for that, Commander. My subordinate is taking care of it, Gustav voiced through the comms. Which squad leader is this? Commander Darmark questioned from the other side. Gustav Crimson, Gustav replied. Oh, what do you mean by taking care of it? Just as Commander Darmark questioned, some beams of light from the sky began to thin out. They are disappearing, one of the other squad leaders reported. There's your answer, Gustav stated. I and another one of my subordinates is headed for the upper district. I hope we're permitted, Gustav added. That is beyond your designated area, Officer Crimson, Commander Colt voiced out. The situation is about to be dire, switching off comms to focus on the mission at hand. Officer Crimson. Officer Crimson, don't you? Gustav totally ignored all of Commander Colt yells as he arrived before one of the houses in the upper district. Bang, bang. Massive roots shot through the walls and headed for Angie and Gustav. Atomic disintegration has been activated. Swing, swing, Gustav swung his palm forward, and the roots were immediately cleaved into multiple pieces. It looked like he only moved his arm once, but in actuality, he swung a couple of times. He was just so quick. It looked like it was once. Go look for the ones that haven't fully turned. They'll take care of this. Gustav leapt through the hole created on the wall after giving Angie the instruction. Upon getting into the house, the sight that greeted Gustav wasn't a pretty one. Garkark Pilis K. Kilomi, the person who said this, did so with great difficulty. She was in a kneeling position, with giant roots protruding from his back, chest, thighs, arms, and even both her eyes. She was bleeding profusely and already lost a part of his skull, yet she was still alive. Body parts with roots protruding from them were scattered across the floor, with blood splattered on the walls. It would seem these were the body parts of her family members. The massive roots were everywhere, and they began headed for him upon sensing his arrival. Swai, multiple of them shot forward at him from every direction. Gustav reached out and grabbed the first one that arrived before him. Intertwining disintegration, Gustav murmured as his palm glowed a milky color. Chapter 1157. Do not purchase, yet don't be too shocked when I reveal my full-strength master, Gustav added. I won't be, but the world, the universe shocked them. Miss Amy smiled as she responded. As they got out of the spacecraft, a bunch of people clad in weird-looking outfits were spotted approaching them from up ahead. They had landed in a vicinity where thousands of spacecraft could be seen. It was really an epic sight to behold. The numbers exiting the numerous spacecraft were very high too. Guys. Just as he voiced out through the comms, houses in the upper district began to glow up. Zion, the roots growing out of the people who had consumed the bloodline dampening seed were glowing up. They began experiencing intense growth spurt, unlike earlier, where it wasn't too intense. Bang, bang, bang. Hundreds of houses in Arabia City were blasted to smithereens as the roots extended from their initial ranges to far beyond. Some of the officers who were battling against the Jenxidus Mechs suddenly found themselves surrounded by gigantic roots that had lengthened to the point where they had reached the sky. Wave of encapsulment, flames of annihilation, draconic thunderbolt. The officers quickly activated powerful abilities. Some activated abilities to protect themselves from the roots, while others did so to blast the roots to smithereens. Unfortunately, the roots had now become impervious to all attacks. Kaya! Arf! The yells of the MBO officers soon reverberated across the entire city as they were restrained and completely entrapped by the roots. The ones who had activated abilities that created barriers around them and their fellow comrades managed to save themselves from getting restrained. However, all they could see beyond the barrier was an endless cover of roots. Everywhere had almost turned completely dark in a couple of seconds. What in the world is this? One of them voiced out. The ones within the protective barriers began to notice some changes to their bodies after some time. Meanwhile, the screams of officers could still be heard. Get to the far corners of the slums. Right now. Gustav voiced through the comms to the rest of his teammates. Eldris, Temi, Ria, Falco, Vera, Alevra, and Glade were in the same area currently, which happened to be in the northern part of the slums. The northern part of the slums happened to be very close to the upper district, hence Gustav's warning. They could already see the towering sea of roots heading in their direction from the upper district area, so they didn't need to be told twice. Let's go, Eldris yelled to Elevera and the girls who were closer to his position. He turned around and began speeding away. Timmy, Rhea, and Falco, who were closer to each other, began their movement as well. However, just as Falco turned around, a mech which was about 100 feet away suddenly leapt in their direction. Bang! He landed directly behind Falco and reached out to hit him. Dark tattoos appeared around Falco's face as he turned around to throw a punch at the same instant. Boom! Upon collision, a loud blast rang out and the ground caved. Both figures were unscathed. However, a metallic entrapment, which was the size of a wrist, phased out of the mech fist. It had already wrapped around Falco's fist and wrist before he noticed it. Timmy and Rhea turned around with speed and were ready to battle when the thrusters on the mech's body activated. Vroawaham, the mech lifted up into the sky with intense speed and flew in the direction of the incoming sea of roots. Falco! Temmie yelled and instantly activated an ability. Rhea did so as well, hurling pillars of earth in their direction, but to no avail. A red spear was conjured in Timmy's hand as he sped forward and flung it with intensity. Fwaiwi, please visit Panda and 0v1. Co. Wind blasted across the place as the spear shot forward with piercing intensity. The mech only noticed the spear when it was a couple of feet away, and even with that, it was already late to do anything. As it turned in mid-flight, bang! It made contact with the chest of the mech and tore right through and went out the back. Quirr! The mech operator vomited blood as he spotted a hole in the place where his chest was. Fwaiwi, both Falco and the mech, who had already crossed a distance of more than 1,000 feet, fell towards the sea of roots below. Falco! Rhea shouted out this time with a look of disbelief. Dash, are you guys still there? Get out of there right now. Gustav yelled through the comms after noticing their location. Still showed they hadn't left. Dash, Falco. Falco was taken, and he fell into the area with those weird roots. Timmy reported back. Dash, what? Everyone voiced out at the same time. We need to help him. Timmy yelled out. PNDN0v1. C. He just fell in. We might still be able to save him if we act now. Timmy sounded unwavering. Dash, you will just be sending yourself to the jaws of death. You have no idea what you're up against or how to protect yourself against it. Leave there immediately. Gustav stated once more. You might be able to leave people to death when the situation warrants, but I am not you. Gustav, I will. Bang. A crashing sound was transmitted through the comms. I knocked him unconscious. I will take him out of this area. Rhea voiced through the comms with a regretful tone. Dash, good job, Rhea. Gustav couldn't deny that this was the last thing he expected Rhea to do, but he was grateful. Rhea, who had knocked Timmy out, could see that the roots were only a couple of feet away, and they had completely devoured the houses ahead. He quickly picked Timmy up and surrounded himself in a ball of earth which turned around and drove them away from the incoming sea of roots with speed. Gustav couldn't say he didn't expect Timmy to act this way. Timmy was always more on the logical side like Eldris, but Gustav knew that deep within he was a big softy. If it was someone else, he wouldn't act this way. But since he considered everyone in the team to be family, he was willing to give up his life if it meant protecting them. Only Gustav initially knew this side of Timmy existed, but now everyone did. Dash, I will handle Falco's situation myself. Make sure Timmy doesn't try anything when he comes to, Gustav voiced through the comms. Dash, where are you? Eldris questioned. In the air, Gustav replied as he looked down upon Aribia's city. From above, massive bat-like wings were sprouting from his back, and a female figure was in the clutches of his left arm. I will regroup with you guys soon and tell you the next plan, Gustav added. Angie looked down at the city as well. All that could be seen were the roots and vines that had covered the entire upper district up. Parts of the slums were not spared either, but it didn't reach too deep into the slums. If we had not gotten all the slum dwellers out of here, the whole city would be covered up by these roots. Angie realized what was happening. More would have died, Gustav added. Those fools should have let me siphon more of their memories, Gustav sparked. He had uncovered the info related to the bloodline dampening seed, and the conventional center ploy amongst others by siphoning the memory of the two high-ranked Janxidus members, since he left the two to EE and asked him to get them to the temporary base. The commanders took custody of both members. After his return, they stopped Gustav from siphoning more of their memories when they found out both members would meet their end. They wanted to take them both alive, no matter what. Gustav only hoped there was no crucial information left that might hinder them, but unfortunately his hopes were dashed with this. They were unaware that the Janxidus could enhance the state of the bloodline dampening seeds with even more features. It's sucking out the life energy of every mixed blood trapped within, and it actively spreads to find more mixed blood. So long as it senses on in range, it tries to trap them, Gustav analyzed. So it could still spread beyond this? Angie questioned. Yes, but as long as certain conditions are not met, it won't, Gustav replied. The Janxidus members are safe since they don't have bloodlines. This means they can escape, Angie said with a look of worry. That's what they think, unfortunately for them. I won't let that happen, Gustav voiced with a tone of confidence. What will you do? What about Timmy? Angie questioned. He is fine. I will go and get him once I get you to the ground, Gustav responded. Chapter 1158, Do Not Purchase. Refresh previous chapter. Are you ready? EE questioned with an excited expression. I would say I was born ready, but I really wasn't, Gustav replied, sarcastically. EE chuckled in response before saying, It doesn't matter that you weren't born ready. What matters is we have fun. It's good that you're no longer as stuck up as you used to be. That is thanks to you guys, Gustav stated while turning to face EE. Come on, man, don't make me shed tears this early in the morning. EE turned to face Gustav as well with a smile. Even though it's dangerous and we might die, let's have fun, Gustav said while stretching out his fist. Yeah, let's do this, man. EE stretched forth his fist as well and gave Gustav a fist bump. Let's do this. Cheers, cheers, cheers. Within a massive arena, all sort of life forms could be seen seated around and cheering with loud voices. SS Fwip, his wings phased into his back in the next instant. Fwai Gustav began to fall towards the sea of roots below in a vertical format. As he closed the proximity between himself and the vines which were towering tall into the sky, they began to react. Thy roots began to shoot upwards in his direction, in a bid to catch him in their snares. Gustav wrapped his arms around himself and began to spin very quickly as he dropped from the air. This made his speed of descent increase, and also caused the roots that shot towards him to miss. Bang! In a couple of seconds, he landed on the ground. He had managed to slither into the gaps of these roots and land on solid ground. However, the moment he did, the roots around him reacted intensely and surrounded his figure to entrap him. Cognitive concealment, Gustav whispered. His presence instantly disappeared the instant he voiced that out. Fwai, the roots paused in the next moment. Every one of them that reacted waved slowly in the air in confusion. After a while they returned to their previous state, and Gustav was left. Those idiots that thought they could escape. Gustav's perception spread out and covered the entire city in nearly an instant. He could sense the MBO officers who were still struggling to stay alive but were already on their last breaths. He could also sense the pile of mixed bloods corpses trapped in different parts of the roots covering the entire city. They belonged to both people of the city as well as MBO officers. Only a few humans and a couple of mixed bloods in the upper district are still alive, but not for long, the system voiced. The oxygen has turned sparse because of the roots, so even though the humans' life force aren't getting sapped because they have no bloodline, they will eventually die from lack of oxygen. Gustav analyzed. The Janxidists don't seem to care about killing even the ones they claim to be making the world better for, as long as they get rid of the MBO and mixed bloods, the system added. Might as well end them now. Gustav could sense even the ones that were currently trying to leave the city. The Janxidist members were not in any way trapped by the roots. Some of them even toyed with some of the nearly dead MBO officers since they were trapped. They laughed at their state and poked them repeatedly. Partial collapsal transformation has been activated. Gustav opened his eyes at this point as his entire body turned greenish and he bloated. Multiple hands phased out of his body and he clasped his palms together. Pa, G-char-h-h-h-h, G-b-b-ch-ch-ch-b-b-b-h-h-h-h. The ground began quaking intensely in the next instant. Everyone within the city, and even in the slums, could feel the intense vibrations. This had them wondering exactly what was going on. However, in the next instant, everyone's jaws dropped to the ground. A wall of spikes that looked like it was made of countless icy diamonds was growing out of the ground. It surrounded the entire upper district, putting Arabia City in a kind of cage. It looked so thick and sturdy as it grew out ground and reached into the sky. In a couple of seconds, it reached a height of 5,000 feet and began to curve. The top of all sides curved in as they kept growing out till the upper district of Arabia City was completely covered up. Now, it truly looked as though the city had been placed in a cage. The icicle-like walls were so deeply bonded and thick that only a few rays of sunlight was let through the covering. All the Janxidist members that were close to arriving at the edge of the upper district were dumbfounded as they found themselves trapped in place. Please visit Panda N0VE1. Guys, make sure you take care of the ones that already got out and every single one of them in the slums. The instant Gustav voiced this command through the comms, the others understood that the covering was his doing. Dash understood. They all answered as they got to work. Gustav wasn't bothered about the MBO officers that were still alive but were at the jaws of death already. He knew if he wasted another second before acting, lots of Janxidist members would escape. It was either he saved them or he got rid of the Janxidist members. He chose the latter. None of you will be leaving alive, Gustav mumbled. You might want to leave some alive for questioning purposes, though. The system reminded. TCH, these bastards sent assassins after me over and over and over again after thrashing my house when they tried to abduct me. I don't plan to leave any of them alive, Gustav responded. Still leave some alive. Maybe you should keep your killing intent for the leaders. The system stated. Gustav began to move at this point, avoiding the roots which were everywhere. Making use of his cognitive concealment had stopped the roots from sensing his existence, which was why they had stopped earlier. Since the roots lacked visual senses, it would be impossible for them to spot Gustav. Gustav wasn't affected by the bloodline dampening effect they had spread across the city, which was why he could use his abilities as he pleased. However, despite the fact that Gustav was unaffected by the bloodline dampening effect, the roots would have still tried to siphon his life force, assuming his presence wasn't hidden. This was something the Janxidists had put in place despite not knowing of the MBO plans. This proved they were truly calculative and smart in their methods. Unfortunately for them, someone like Gustav existed. This practically tipped the balance each time, since Gustav's existence couldn't be measured with common sense like other mixed bloods. Hey, what is this? I have tried every artillery, but it barely made a difference. One of the mech operators voiced out. In a particular part of the upper district, around 20 Janxidist members were clustered together. They were trying to leave, but finding it difficult to cause any form of damage to the wall cage that had just appeared all over the city. Let's try doing it together. One of the Janxidist members, who was also operating a mech, voiced out. Dash, the others without good weapons should move to the side. Dash, there is barely any space here. Where are we supposed to move to? They argued back and forth until a loud voice interrupted. "Let me help." They all turned around when they heard this. "Who is that?" Since they didn't recognize the voice, neither did they sense or hear the approach, one of them asked, "Your friendly neighborhood Spiderma. May y'all wouldn't get it." The voice responded, "Step, step, step." A person covered in a milky glow appeared from within some of the roots, which disintegrated upon making contact with his body. Atomic armor has been deactivated. Their eyes widened as they saw the original look of this person. Goo. Gustav Crimson? What is he doing here? How is he unaffected? The Jenxidus members voiced out one after the other with expressions of wariness. "Do not concern yourselves with these questions. After all," Gustav smirked as he spoke. "There is no point in answering the dead," Gustav added before speeding forward. Swoosh pan DN0V1 CM. Atomic disintegration has been activated. Palm strike has been activated. Gustav activated 2 skills at once and thrusted his right palm forward. A milky glow coated his entire arm as his palm thrust forward with intensity. Bang! His palm tore through the chest of the mech upon collision and kept thrusting forward till it penetrated the chest of the operator. The eyes of the Jenxidus members widened even more as they witnessed an organ flying out of the back of the operator. Plop! The Jenxidus member heart slammed into the wall ahead and got poked by one of the Iroh silk. Everything had happened so fast, the members equipped with weapons and mech were unable to react in time. Jackson, a female Jenxidus member, yelled out with an horrified look, "Kill him!" The Jenxidus members yelled out as they activated their weapon systems and sent forth all sorts of attacks in Gustav's direction. Chapter 1159, The Bloven Tree Race. At the same instant he picked, a loud announcement rang out. The Bloven Tree Race has commenced. Immediately after this announcement, the group sped forward intensely at their desired tree. The stampede had caused a cloud of dust to scatter across the place, but such couldn't hinder any one of them. Gustav and the others arrived in front of the one he picked and immediately placed their hands on it in a bid to pull it out of the ground. "Hold on. Send your energy into it first." Gustav stopped them before they could forcefully yank it with their strength. "The tree must accept your energy before you can pull it out. If we try to do so forcefully, the roots will extend further into the soil and keep extending till it becomes impossible to pull out. Using our abilities are restricted. So imagine how long we would spend here, trying to uproot a supernatural tree," Gustav explained lengthily, causing the others to stare with astonished expressions. The handler decided to withhold this information. How did he figure it out in just a glance? Everyone placed their palm on the tree at this point to do as Gustav had instructed. Meanwhile, in the vicinity, the other participants were struggling to pull theirs out. SS the operator fell out, and Gustav stomped on his head, blasting it to pieces and giving the ground a new painting. The Jenxidus members were even more horrified after witnessing Gustav's brutality. They had heard stories of how cold and callous he was to his enemies. Witnessing his actions now, they had no more doubts. Contact the higher-ups, or we're all going to die here. One of the Jenxidus members yelled out while engaging Gustav. Flyish, Gustav conjured 2 atomic blades in his hands and swung them sideways. Slash, slash. 2 milky-colored arcs cut across the air with intensity and cleaved 2 mechs in half. Both operators were instantly sent to the afterlife after getting dissected. Gustav dashed across the place and leapt upwards to a mech that was up to 30 feet tall before burrowing his fist into the chest area of the mech. The mech was immensely sturdy, and he already calculated this beforehand, so he made use of the double effect ability. The last 5 mechs suddenly took up an unknown battle formation the instant Gustav performed that action. Here. A ball of energy had been charging up within the chest area of the mech. which they finally revealed. Fire! One of them yelled out as they each released this ball of energy which was reddish in color. Gustav wanted to pull his arm out of the hole he created within the 30 feet tall mech in a bid to evade all five, but soon realized he was trapped. Fish! 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 The 3 mech operators within ejected and thrusters appeared around them, which boosted their speed as they headed further away. The mech operators leapt backwards upon releasing this attack as well. Thrira, Thria, strings of light suddenly shot forth from these energy balls at light speed and stuck to Gustav's body. He was unable to react on time due to how quickly they arrived before him. In the next instant, energy ripples were released from these energy balls, and then boom, 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 boom. Blasts rang out, setting forth waves of destruction in every direction. The houses covered up by the roots in the vicinity were all blasted to kingdom come as the ripple of waves destroyed everything in its path. The force was enough to create a massive crater in the ground due to the destructiveness. The walls set up ahead even quaked a bit as shock waves were sent flying across the place. The houses in this area with people who were still alive initially had all been blasted to nothingness as well. A massive cloud of dust spread across the upper district, as a quarter of it had been destroyed from this blast. The other Jinxidus members had activated protective devices to shield them from the waves of this gargantuan attack, so they were okay. As the dust cleared, a 20,000 feet wide crater was left in place with lots of the roots in the vicinity blasted away. It was more than 1,000 feet deep and cracks were at every corner. That should have gotten him. Some of them moved towards the ledge as they voiced out. Some of them were directly in the crater since they didn't get far enough, but they were unscathed due to the energy field they used since all of them knew of the attack beforehand. The mech operators moved forward as well to check the crater. I don't see him. He must have been reduced to ashes. The walls are still standing though. What the hell? Even with such a blast, they didn't crumble? The Jinxidus members discussed amongst themselves with looks of relief and disbelief at the same time. We need to find a way. In the midst of discussing, a small rumble drew their attention, followed by the movement of a large piece of earth in the middle of the crater. What is happening? They questioned amongst each other. Bang! A piece of earth moved to the side, and a person was revealed underneath. Gasp! It can't be. He is still alive? Their eyes widened, and their jaws nearly dropped to the ground as they spotted Gustav in the middle of this gigantic crater. Clunk, 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 clunk. Pieces of icicle-like crystals fell from his body as he slowly stood to his feet with a dark face. The Jinxidus members noticed that the icicle-like crystals bore a resemblance to the walls that had been erected around the upper district. Could he be the one responsible for this cage? They were coming to this awe-striking realization at the moment. Blood trickled down Gustav's face, and the upper part of his MBO uniform had been completely obliterated, displaying his magnificent-looking body. He had a few more bloodied area on his upper body, but he didn't seem to be in pain. That should have wiped out no less than 500 houses. They truly don't care about the deaths of others as long as they achieve their goal, Gustav thought as he looked upwards. We're nearly out of core energy. Run. One of the Jinxidus members operating a mech yelled out. Kaya! Run. The Jinxidus members turned around to flee. Now I feel more affirmed with leaving none of you alive, Gustav muttered as wings sprouted out of his back. Foop, his figure blurred, and he instantly arrived at the top of the crater. The Jinxidus member he arrived before still had his mouth open in fear and shock. What he noticed next was his sight elevating while the rest of his body was still on the ground. If you want to leave your life behind, Gustav voiced out while holding on to the decapitated head of the Jinxidus member. He had yanked the head of the Jinxidus member off his body, so quickly that blood only started flowing out when he was already more than 100 feet away from the decapitated body. Kaya! The members kept screaming out in terror as Gustav sped across the air. Gustav decapitated another Jenxidus member and held both heads in his hands. He suddenly arched his arm backwards with both heads in his grasp in a throwing format. Fwyi! The heads caught fire and began blazing intensely like two fiery balls. He swung forward in the next instant, throwing both heads out. Bang, bang, bang. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Gustav counted as the flaming heads slammed into one Jenxidus member after the other. Bang, 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 bang. Upon collision, the heads would burrow into the body of a member and come out the other side, leaving a head-size hole in their body. Both heads brought down more than 12 Jenxidus members before losing momentum. Not bad. Gustav smirked as he stared at the chaos from above. The rest that were still alive were frantically fleeing for their lives while screaming with terrified expressions. They had been completely shaken by everything they had just witnessed and could only hope they would get out of this alive. Fuhum Gustav sped across the air once more and arrived before a Jenxidus member. Swai with a swing of his palm, the Jenxidus member instantly lost an arm. Please spare me. Please. She kept pleading while dragging herself on the ground, while blood oozed out of her empty shoulder. How hypocritical. You lots just killed tens of thousands, and you're pleading to be spared? Gustav clicked his tongue as he squatted in front of her. Please. It's the higher-ups. We can't disobey them. She kept pleading while trying to drag herself further away. Grab. Gustav grabbed one of her leg and pulled her back to his position. To think you can even fool me is yet another reason to punish you, Gustav stated before swinging his palm forward. Splurt, blood splattered across the place as the Jenxidus member lost her left leg. Kyrgek. Her face turned completely pale as she screamed in pain with snot flowing out of her nose. Oh, you think I don't know you? Haha, weren't you the one who led an operation that caused the death of around 5,000 mixed bloods? Gustav voiced slowly. Her face shone a look of confusion and disbelief. You're probably wondering how I know that. It's a secret, Gustav stated before ripping another limb. Swoosh, Gustav left the poor Jenxidus member to die in her pool of blood as he chased down the rest. He left a trail of blood and incomplete body parts in his wake. Hunting down the Jenxidus members in this cage he had created seemed like a sport to him. He didn't spare anyone he spotted and slaughtered wantonly. He would give chase, leave them frightened before slaughtering a whole bunch of them. The cage was becoming too small for them despite how large it was. There was nowhere they could escape to that the Grim Reaper in form of Gustav wouldn't find them. All the MBO officers who were unable to escape from the upper district before the roots covered everywhere were already long dead. Gustav decided to pay them a tribute by sending the souls of these Jenxidus members to join them in the afterlife. About an hour later, Gustav landed in the middle of the upper district with a body soaked in blood. Yash. 12,632 Jenxidus members erased from the face of the earth, Gustav stated, since he had kept count since the beginning. Only one left. A sinister smile appeared on his face as he turned towards the left. Ek. A small, masculine voice rang out from the side, and the sounds of footsteps were heard next. Fush, Gustav body blurred once more, and he arrived a couple of feet away. Bump. Something, or rather, someone bumped into him, but the person was invisible. The person quickly turned around to run, while still invisible. Grab. Gustav grabbed hold of the person's neck from behind and lifted them up. Don't delude yourself. I saw you from the start. I just chose to leave you for last, Gustav voiced while tightening his grip on the neck of the invisible Jenxidus member. Threa, a glitch-like projection, appeared around where Gustav was gripping, and the person turned visible. It was a man with buzz cut and a green mechanical-looking armor surrounding his body. Gruckruckle, the Jenxidus member body, thrashed in midair as he struggled to breath. Not to worry, if I wanted to kill you, I would have done that already, Gustav voiced out as he slowly loosened his grip. Chapter 1160, do not purchase yet. Calm down. The moment they deactivated the spatial disruptor, we will be able to leave here through the emergency exit, the main leader stated with a calming tone. An holographic display of the cage surrounding Arabia City Upper District was playing out before them. By the side, it showed distorted footage of the bodies scattered across the city. They had partially witnessed Gustav's slaughter spree, which had incited the panic they felt. Seeing how brutal he had acted, they didn't want to get caught by any means. Within an unknown medieval city, icy stones fell from the skies above as the whole city seemed to be severely lowered in temperature. The icy stones, which were of different sizes, blasted to pieces when they reached a certain height due to a dome covering the entire medieval city. In the outskirts of the city, some of these falling ice stones were as large as buildings, and they fell unhindered to the ground. A normal person wouldn't last outside the city, since they would be crushed to pieces by the falling ice stones. Hailstorms were a usual sight in this unknown location, and the climate was usually on the extreme winter side. A 510-tall teenage boy with curly black hair strolled through the medieval city streets with a slightly bewildered expression. He was clad in silky and ragged-looking brown attire. A lot of the houses around here were made with ice stones, and the temperature was really at a freezing point, yet the people of the city didn't seem bothered by it. It looked like they strived in coldness. The teenage boy with curly black hair stared at a particular part of the city, which had a floating cone-shaped building in the heart of the city. He was closing in on that area already, and the people around greeted him with respectful expressions upon sighting him. After a few more minutes, he finally arrived in the vicinity of the floating cone-like structure. A 7-foot-tall, gallant figure in silver and golden armor suddenly appeared before him. This figure sported a long blue hair and was equipped with a massive 6-foot-long sword. She stood right in front of Endrick, blocking his path. By her side were 2 guards with straight-looking expressions, both equipped with weapons. "Tarmac, are you going against your word now?" Endrick voiced out while raising his head slightly to meet her gaze. "Eric, you have accomplished the final task required, so I can no longer deny you access," Tarmac responded. "It's Endri." "Aish, never mind," Endrick gave up trying to correct her. "There is one thing you need to know before you get into the Library of Shadows," the Tarmac resumed speaking. "What is that?" Endrick questioned. "Do not under any circumstance go for the book with a triple golden starred cover. It is forbidden, and you will immediately be pulled out of the Library of Shadows," the Tarmac revealed. "Your life will be spared if you did not see the contents after getting pulled out of the library, but if you so much as manage to take a glimpse of the contents, no matter how little, you shall be sentenced to death," she added. Endrick gulped down a throat full of saliva after hearing this. "Understood," he replied. She stared at Endrick briefly, with a suspicious look before finally moving aside. "Stand underneath," she instructed while gesturing at the space underneath the floating cone structure. Endrick did, as instructed, moving to the designated spot. The Tarmac collected a dagger from one of the guards beside her and pulled off her left glove. An unknown tattoo, like marking, could be seen in the middle of her palm. She then proceeded to stab the middle of the palm where the tattoo was inscribed. Pee and blood oozed out, and the tattoo changed from white to red before glowing up brightly. Endrick, who was standing under the floating cone structure, felt a pull from above and raised his head. Fwine, in the next instant, he suddenly disappeared. "Sir Tarmac, are you sure we can trust him?" one of the guards questioned. "It doesn't matter. He poses no threat to us, and I will instantly end his life if he chooses to disregard the warnings, the tarmac replied. But it seems as though you are really fond of him, sir, the other guard said with a tone of disbelief and respect. My city comes first. Anyone who tries to threaten my city, regardless of who they may be, I will cut them down. The tarmac's beautiful face twitched a little before she put her gloves back. She walked away afterwards, leaving the guards with surprised expressions. They knew how the tarmac had gotten close to Endrick in the last 1 year, since he was permitted access into the city. She must be bluffing. The tarmac never bluffs. Both guards exchanged a brief dialogue before following after her. Aribia City, Upper District. Yeah, I need you to level this part of the city. Can you do it? Gustav asked through the comms. Level a part of the city? How much range? Rhea questioned through the comms. A small area. I need you to level it to around 1,500 feet deep, Gustav replied. Why do I feel like you can easily take care of this, rival? Rhea yelled. Please visit Panda N0V1. If I decided to take care of it myself, the entire city will be blasted off the map, but you have more control over the Earth, so you're best for the job, Gustav explained. Ugh. If Gustav was around Rhea, he would have seen the blank expression on his face. I need to get stronger, so I can flex like this too. This was the thought running through Rhea's mind. Rhea, can you do it? Gustav asked once more. Okay, so long as I am not too far from the area, he responded. Good. I won't be letting you get into the cage because the roots will take effect on you and also try to ensnare you too, Gustav voiced out. Let's do it. Rhea became fired up. Minutes later, Gustav was in the air once more. He stared at the city from above as he gave a set of instructions. I've gotten the humans who live in the houses in that area out of there. You can go ahead, Gustav voiced through the comms. After a few more seconds, a rumble reverberated across the upper district. In a part of the upper district, the ground suddenly began to cave in. KRRYYYCHHH, GHBBBBLLL. Cracks spread across a wide area as the ground collapsed in and continued to spread for a radius of 1,000 feet. All of the building structures in that area, as well as the roots, all caved in as well. They crumbled as they fell into the large hole. About a minute later, what was left in that area was a hole more than 1,500 feet deep. Gustav stared at it from above with a satisfied expression before swooping downwards. Fuho! Bang! He landed at the bottom of the hole in a few moments, which was filled with all sorts of rubble. It was completely dark at the bottom, but Gustav was unaffected by such a situation. He tapped his wrist area and a holographic display showing a couple of things appeared. Zing! In the next instant, a palm-sized device appeared in his grasp. A smirk appeared on Gustav's face as he slowly took a squatting position with this device in his grasp. A minute earlier, Pindi, N0V1. Is this what I think it is? The ground just sank in, and now the area we're situated is now exposed. There is no need for panic leaders. We still exist in another dimensional frequency. We are safe here. The main leader kept assuring the other leaders as they watched footage of happenings above surface level. The space was still dimly lit, but there was tension in the air despite the unclear faces of the Jenxidus leaders. He just landed at the bottom of the hole. What is? He is definitely up something. Tension rose as they stared at Gustav's actions. If we're truly safe here, then what is he doing with that? One of the leaders questioned as they spotted a device in Gustav's grasp. Isn't that? That is the same charge used to affect the other dimensional frequencies earlier. We are doomed. The leaders jumped to their feet as they noticed Gustav placing the device on the ground and activating it. Relax, leaders. Relax. The main leader also stood to his feet as he voiced out. We still have contingency plans, he voiced out while slowly stepping backwards. Upon arriving at the wall, he tapped a part of its surface. Seeing a small space shitted open in the wall, and he stepped in with his back. I meant, I still have contingency plans. A sinister smile appeared on the main leader's face. He voiced out. Leader. You, although their faces couldn't be seen properly. There was no doubt that the other leaders had expressions of betrayal on their faces at the moment. Follow me on TikTok. Timvic_. I posted a spoiler video. Chapter 1161. Do not purchase. Refresh. Gustav raised the tree with everyone at this instant and quickly swerved 50 feet towards the left. Bang! At the same instant he left his initial position, a massive figure landed there. KRRYYCCHHH. Cracks spread across the icy path, causing Gustav to look down. Damn it, this is the worst place for a fight, Gustav thought as he looked up ahead at the group that had just arrived. Mixed bloods. Humph. The rocky captain voiced out as he held the massive tree like a stick with his subordinates latching onto it. Get them disqualified, Captain, one of his teammates yelled from the top of the tree. Okay, hold on tight. They, of course, were speaking in a different language, but the language transmitting device interpreted it to Gustav and the others. Looks like they bear a grudge, Teamy voiced. It's the Klaxosapes, Falco stated. Everyone hold on tight, Gustav said to the others as he tightened his grip around the tree and stared at the 20 feet tall rocky giant. Rhea, the Klaxosapes captain yelled as it charged at Gustav while swinging the massive tree. Gustav turned at this point and sped forward. Fwai, the Klaxosapes captain air as Gustav sped away from his initial standing point. The ice can give way at any time, Gustav said internally while the cracks spread. The Klaxosapes captain began giving chase from behind, but was having a hard time catching up. At this same instant, a charge was set off on the surface. Gustav had activated the device. Sorry, my fellow leaders, but this place only allows one person. I have enough oxygen and food here to last me for days till the effect of the charge wears off, then I can escape, the leader voiced out as he noticed the other leaders began to choke. Core. H-out quildu? The rest of the leaders coughed intensely as they voiced out with tones of regret. I shall rebuild the Jenxidus. Since we still have lots of bases scattered across the world, bouncing back from this incident won't be an issue, the main leader voiced out from the secluded space. Too bad the rest of you won't be here to witness it. He clicked his tongue with a tone of disappointment. If you four are truly loyal to the Jenxidus, you should kill yourselves or stay here till you die instead of getting caught by Gustav Crimson, the main leader added. Above the surface, Gustav stood in place, waiting after the charge had been set off. Any minute now, Gustav muttered with a smile as he waited. They won't be able to get away with any spatial help since the disruptor is active, the system announced. So they have no choice but to exit the other frequency from the vicinity. Looks like I have nothing to worry about, Gustav replied with a look of understanding. After a couple of minutes, a circular beam of light appeared on the ground several feet away. Zing! 2 figures clad in whitish cloak appeared within the circular beam an instant later. Zing! Before Gustav could check them out, another circular beam appeared a couple of feet behind. The moment Gustav turned around to check out the second beam, the figures that had just appeared stormed off. Phew-hum, both of them had instantly tapped on the chest area of the cloak, which in turn caused their entire figure to be covered in a suit. This was activated the instant they arrived on the surface. The suit gave them increased movement speed and agility, which they were currently using to try to get away. Fwai with a single leap. Both figures had crossed up to 500 feet, and they headed in separate directions. Just as Gustav was about to go after them, the ones that had just arrived as well performed the same action. PND-NO1. All 4 of them had fled in separate directions while clad in the suit that enhanced their physical capabilities. They all headed north, southeast, and west respectively, arriving at the top of the hole in only a few moments. They must have planned this before leaving the other dimensional frequency. Thinking it would work against me, Gustav muttered as he made a 360 degrees turn to check out the runners. Blink! Gustav's eyes suddenly turned dark pink with a mixture of gold. Cosmic superiority. Parallel domain, Gustav whispered. Hayuk, please visit Panda, N0V1. Man outburst of golden and pink energy was sent forth from his figure. The runners instantly felt a wave of unprecedented and unfathomable energy sweep across the vicinity. Gustav had controlled the wave of his parallel domain, limiting it to only a small range. Had he let it run wild, the entire city as well as the neighboring ones would be affected. This was something he didn't want since his friends were also within the city. This power was a combination of Yarki and another ability he unlocked after becoming a parallel being. All figures that were escaping initially paused as they figured out they had lost control of their body functions. Their figures were lifted into the air, and they found their bodies floating back to the same place they fled from. No matter how much they tried, they couldn't even move a finger, much less let out a scream. They were completely incapacitated by this strange and unknown Goldie power. Only their thoughts were their own, but their bodies at this point didn't even belong to them anymore. Is this the power of Gustav Crimson? Just as suspected, he is indeed a dangerous man. The leader's thoughts ran wild as they arrived before Gustav. Did you lots think you could actually escape from me like that? A smirk appeared on Gustav's face as he voiced out. Think again, Gustav said while moving towards the first one. Fish, he deactivated his suit, and the face that appeared before him was a blue-colored one with horn on the forehead. Gustav moved to the next one and deactivated the suit as well. This time, it was a female face. She looked pretty human but had a pointy ear with unknown markings behind them. The last two Gustav deactivated had similar looks, making Gustav believe they were relatives. Two of them had the same type of horn on their faces. All Slarkovs? I thought as much, Gustav said internally after uncovering their identities. There was not a single human amongst these Jenxidus leaders. Now that I have you all in the palm of my hand, tell me why I shouldn't slaughter you one after the other, Gustav stated. They were silent for a bit before Gustav realized something. Oh, he snapped his fingers after exclaiming. You can speak now, he said while conjuring a chair out of Iro silk. He proceeded to sit with his legs crossed as the floating figures in front of him drew a little closer. You can't kill us, Gustav Crimson. We are valuable to the MBO. Oh, is that so? A snack appeared in Gustav's hand, and he began chewing away as he listened to them speak. You are a slave to the MBO. You must keep we the leaders alive for questioning. One of them voiced out once more. Am I now? Gustav gobbled down another mouthful of snack before nonchalantly staring at the fourth leader who had just spoken. Fwywhy eyes bang. A popping sound rang out in the next instant, causing the leader's eyes to widen in shock and fright. I guess you can't answer my question. After all, you're missing a head, Gustav muttered as he stared at the fourth floating leader, who now had a headless corpse. Kyrar. No. The three leaders yelled out as they watched blood squirt out of the fourth leader's headless corpse like a fountain. Gustav watched the blood flow with an unbothered expression before snapping his fingers. The headless corpse fell to the ground and was soon covered in a pool of its own blood. Chomp, Gustav resumed, gnawing on the snack bar in his hand, while watching the frightened reactions of the other leaders. I wonder if anyone else thinks I'm a slave of the MBO, Gustav voiced out while swallowing another mouthful of snack. Despite the stench of blood in the vicinity, he was not bothered in the slightest. Please spare us, the leaders began pleading for their lives. Nah, one, or maybe all of you will still die by my hands, Gustav replied without an iota of mercy in the tone of his voice. Please, we will tell you everything you want to know, Please spare me. I will for sure cooperate. Well, it depends on if you give me enough valuable information. Then I can let the rest of you live. If not, I'll just kill all three of you and tell the MBO there was no way to save you lots. After saying this, Gustav drank a bottle full of water. There is still one more. Gustav's face beamed with a look of interest upon hearing the female leader say this. Tell me more. The bottle in Gustav's grasp disintegrated into light particles as he stared at the Slarkov woman with interest. Contact them again. Chapter 1162. Good job, Captain. You pulled through for us in this one, Eldra stated while tapping Gustav's shoulder. We still came second, Gustav voiced out. At the very least we were top 3, and this is the first challenge, so it doesn't matter much, he responded while wrapping his right arm around Gustav's neck. And it was fun too. A smile appeared on Gustav's face as he stated. That's the spirit, he chuckled. That was the slowest I've had to move in a long time. Angie complained a little from behind, but she understood the race, left them with no choice. Good job, Captain. Good job, Captain. Everyone still praised Gustav since he did up to 50% of the work. Those guys are super strong, Teamy said while staring at the Klaxosapes who were basking in the cheers from the audience as they left the track. Oh, them. Yes, they are. A smirk appeared on Gustav's face as stated. Matilda stared at Gustav's expression with a weird look. Are you getting excited? She questioned. Of course I am. I won't be worried about going all out now. A lot of opponents here, or will make it worthwhile, Gustav replied, causing everyone to shake their heads. He's crazy. They didn't understand Gustav was genuinely excited because none of his peers would be able to contend with him if he went all out. However, in the race he had contended against another species with his full strength and lost. Despite not making use of any abilities, Gustav was still sure he had sensed really powerful beings amongst many others during the Bloven Tree race. He was looking forward to other categories where there would be no restrictions. Things were bound to get even crazier. Planet Cyrus, 15th place. Planet Oxlurk, 16th place. The announcements kept going off as more planets arrived at the finish line. Some of them that had just arrived stared at Earth candidates with sharp looks. It was almost like they were throwing a challenge, saying, next category will end differently. A couple of them even went on to unleash their energy, causing the winds in the vicinity to howl. Indeed, a lot of them were not weak, but instead restricted due to the race. Gustav just smirked in response before walking off with his teammates. Don't destroy too much while having fun, Angie said from the side while rubbing Gustav's cheek as they walked away. No worries. I'm sure they can handle it. Maybe, Gustav replied while grabbing her left palm and giving it a peck. Cheers, cheers, cheers. The loud voice of the spectators could be heard as Earth candidates walked off the tracks as well. Well done, Miss Amy said to Gustav the instant they arrived in front of their waiting room. Thank you, Master, Gustav voiced in response. Do better next time, she added. I intend to, Gustav replied with a light chuckle. Hours later, the first challenge of ISOP had ended. The results had been announced, and a table of scores had been displayed on screens all across the 9 discs. Over 500 groups got disqualified, while around 1,300 managed to finish the race. The disqualified parties had no point assigned to them. Meanwhile, all groups that managed to finish got points accredited to them, even if they came last. The Klaxosapes being placed first received a total of 3,000 points, while Earth received 2,000. Planet Foing came third and got 1,000 points. Going further below, the points got a decrease in 10 at every next position. The top 2 had given every other planet quite the gap. It was also revealed that points varied based on the challenges given in main categories. However, main categories would always have much higher points accredited compared to subcategories. Gustav and the others were currently in their accommodation area as they went through today's challenge again. Since it was the first day, it was scheduled to have a single main category challenge, but From the next day, subcategories would be starting. The group had prepared their minds, as some of them would have to participate in both the main and subcategory the next day. How long does the competition run? Teamy question from the side. Currently unknown, but the first stage of disqualification will be after a week. Falco replied. How many points are required to not get disqualified, though? Matilda questioned as well. 3,000 points. Don't you guys pay any attention? Falco replied again. Tee-hee-hee. Almost everyone chuckled wryly as they heard this. It was difficult to take note of everything, but it seemed like Falco had done precisely that. Oh, I guess we just have to make sure we score extra 1,000 points to remain above disqualification, Fildhor stated. Play, Finks flicked his forehead from the side. Aim higher, she voiced out. TCH. Anyways, anyone wants to tell me why the Klaxosapes were literally looking to draw blood? Angie voiced from behind. Please visit Panda and 0V1. They have bad blood with Earth, Falco disclosed. No shit, Sherlock. She's asking why. Glade stated from the side. Long STO. Earth took custody of a resourceful star that appeared in their galaxy, and they feel we're thieves. Endrick answered before Falco could write them off. It's a little more complicated than that, Falco voiced. Yeah, but that's the short version, Endrick replied. Hubby is so smart. Sheila jumped into Endrick's embrace and began ruffling his cheeks. That explanation makes Earth look like the bad guy, though, Falco stated. Then how about explaining it yourself? Matilda rolled her eyes. Okay, see the pan to N0. VE1, they looked just like the handlers, but they were obviously different people. Can anyone let me speak before interrupting? Falco rolled his eyes while voicing out. What the hell is this? Yonda voiced with an irritated look while staring at the discs. The one above was so wide, it carried some rhombus-shaped bowls, which in turn had some weird-looking foods in them. Some looked like purple and was heart-shaped, while some resembled green tentacles with some eyeballs scattered within what looked like a soup. These foods were like nothing they had ever seen. Everyone had looks of disgust as Yonda picked up an eyeball, which was dripping some weird green mucus like liquid. Ozia's specialty. One of the Ozas began to introduce the dish. Gustav, I think you might have to resume cooking for us like you did in the last few days we arrived here, Eldris voiced from the side. Nope. Everyone dig in and listen to tomorrow's main category challenge and subcategories challenges, Gustav instructed. Man, this has got to be some drainage soup. The smell, everyone kept complaining even after the two who brought it in had left. Just as Gustav was about to start speaking, crunch! The loud crunch attracted everyone's attention as they turned to face the culprit. Her jaw paused for a bit as she felt everyone's eyes on her. Hey, it's actually pretty good, Glade voiced after gulping down the eyeball she had just chewed. Dash, Helma? Dash, what the fug? Dash, brew. Dash, how'd she do that? Guys. Gustav's loud voice rang out, causing everyone to focus their attention on him again. Tomorrow's challenge has been revealed, he stated. What is it? Elders inquired. It is called the River Split, Gustav disclosed. What does that mean? He asked precisely what everyone thought. It is just as the name states. We'll be splitting rivers, Gustav voiced out. Huh? But this planet don't have any rivers, Rhea stated. It doesn't, but just like today, they can easily create one, I guess, Gustav replied. It sounds like an easy challenge, Matilda said with a confounded expression. Do not let your guard down. It might sound simple, but we still have no idea about whether or not it will be complicated till tomorrow arrives, Eldris voiced out. As for the subcategories, only 2 will be holding tomorrow, Gustav resumed speaking. The Varlin Chase and the Seismic Climb, Gustav disclosed. Details? Angie quickly got interested the instant she heard this. The Varlin Chase has a requirement of at least 3 teammates from a planet. It could be substitutes or from the main group. Everyone stared at each other after Gustav said the, unsure about whether they wanted the substitutes to take care of it. Just as the name suggests, Varlin Chase, there will be a chase, Gustav added. Yes. Finally, I get to chase after something, Angie rejoiced. No, the participates don't get to chase. Instead, they get chased. Angie's face dropped as she heard this. She had rejoiced too quickly. Huh? Yeah, you get chased, and if a teammate gets caught, they are disqualified. However, so long as one teammate remains till the game ends, the planet can progress to the next stage, Gustav added. All chapters error before privilege tiers were fixed over a week ago. If you refreshed and the chapter still doesn't look fixed, then you might have to uninstall and reinstall the app. Chapter 1163, yeah, you get chased, and if a teammate gets caught, they're disqualified. However, so long as one teammate remains till the game ends, the planet can progress to the next stage, Gustav added. This seems more tricky than it sounded at first, Eldris voiced out. It's fine so long as I don't get caught, right? Angie stated as well. Yes, Gustav replied. All right, then I won't get caught, Angie voiced confidently. You don't even know what you'll be running from yet. Gustav chuckled, but he didn't doubt Angie's capabilities. You can add any other 2 persons from the team, since it doesn't matter if they don't do well, Angie said. While I admire the confidence, we still need to make sure your backups are up to par. We can never be fully prepared for unexpectancies, Gustav replied before turning to stare at the rest of the teammates. Finks and Abestos, you're with Angie, Gustav instructed. Finks turned to stare at Angie, giving her a look with hidden meanings. Nothing beats the original, Angie stated in response to her look. Sure, does this mean impermitted? Finks inquired. Angie didn't respond until Gustav gave her a look down. This time she's on your side, so it shouldn't matter. In fact, it's good, Gustav voiced. TCH, all right, sure, Angie replied before taking her seat. Abestos, I picked you 'cause you're one of the fastest here besides Angie, and myself, so make sure to hold on as best as you can, Gustav addressed Abestos, who was seated all this time with his arms crossed. No problem. I just hope we gather enough points to make it worthwhile, Abestos voiced. As for the seismic climb, only 2 participants are needed. In picking 2 teammates with the strongest grip, Gustav announced as he moved around. He arrived in front of Timmy first and stretched forth his hand. Shake me with all of your strength, Gustav instructed. Timmy's face turned serious as he stood to his feet and stretched his hand forward to shake Gustav's. GHRRHHH. An unprecedented pressure spread across the place as they shook hands, but without the shaking, the place began to quake as they stared face down while their hands were clasped to each other. All right, that's enough, Gustav said before separating and moving on to the next person without saying another word. Try not to destroy the building we're staying from a handshake, Gustav stated as he arrived before Falco. Hours later during midnight, Gustav stood in a part of the building corridor while staring through the massive triangular glass wall. Other oddly shaped buildings could be spotted in the distance as he stood in place like he was in a deep trance. What is it? Angie questioned while approaching from behind. Nothing, Gustav replied without turning around. It doesn't seem like nothing, Angie said as she arrived on his left. My sensory perception is getting interfered with, Gustav voiced. Does that mean you were trying to spy on the other accommodations? Angie inquired. Yes, I am always curious about my opponents, Gustav answered. He had made use of God eyes to try and spy on the other alien species around, but there was something interfering with it. Gustav knew he could forcefully push God eyes to break past the interference, but he was also aware that the moment he did that, the ones responsible for the interference would immediately trace it back to his location. His default perception was also encountering the same interference, which was the reason for his response to Angie. Didn't you already make research, though? Angie inquired. I did, but no form of research is ever enough, especially when it's done from database. It's always better to acquire more information from the source itself, Gustav replied. That's the Draconet's accommodation area, right? Angie questioned as she noticed where Gustav's gaze was fixated upon. It is. Weren't you more worried about the Klaxosapes? The Draconets weren't even top 10 in the first challenge. Pfft, Angie, you're truly unaware about the situation. Based on my findings so far, around 237 out of almost 3,000 planets hold a threat to us as we are now. That is precisely 4,740 opponents with the potential to cause our disqualification in ISOP. Please visit P-Alpha-1. Mangie's face displayed a look of disbelief as she heard Gustav reveal this. Over 4,000? That's a lot, Angie voiced with a nervous tone. There's also the probability that throughout the entirety of ISOP we won't encounter up to 80% of them due to the sheer numbers of ISOP participants. However, encountering a couple of them is inevitable, and there's no telling which one it will be, and how high or low they are ranked on my danger list, Gustav explained. Angie knew Gustav to be very calculative, so she wasn't surprised about how he was stating his thoughts. This had also helped him take care of many battles that couldn't be toppled with just strength or power alone. So, the Klaxosapes are not even top 20 on the danger list. The Draconets rank higher than them. Gustav cut Angie short before she could complete her sentence. That's crazy talk, but coming from you, I actually believe it, Angie stated in response. The first challenge made things disadvantageous to a lot of species, but the Klaxosapes were barely disadvantaged. The only thing they have going for them is their strength, but some of these other species who couldn't use their abilities are 10 times more dangerous, Gustav voiced. The Tribtes, the Draconets, the Hixtos, and even the Ozis are more dangerous than the Klaxosapes. Gustav only mentioned a few as he was still making findings. The first challenge was not enough to observe, but I can tell that things will get more difficult in the future. A smirk appeared on Gustav's face as he said this. He wanted to address the group as well, but he decided not to yet. You're too excited about this, Angie complained. It's no fun if they are not strong enough, Gustav replied. You should go to bed. Tomorrow will be a long day for you, Gustav added. Will you be joining me? She questioned while moving closer to him. With their faces only inches apart, Gustav took a whiff of her feminine fragrance and held his breath to control himself. No, he replied while his ears were turning red. You should, Angie said with a seductive tone before planting a peck on his face and walking away. Gustav's cheeks had turned red at this point as he stared at her walking away. Women are dangerous, he muttered while finally breathing out to calm himself. I should focus on my current task. He turned his sight towards the front again before suddenly vanishing from his standing point. Cheers, 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 cheers. The sound of loud cheering reverberated across a massive arena-like area. Millions could once again be seen gathered in the spectators' areas. P-Alpha and D-Alpha, no one SS, send word to the reinforcements surrounding the upper district. Tell them to bring back the captured member and leaders and also escort Officer Crimson back to this base, Commander Colt yelled. The operators in the control room nodded as they got to work. Within the upper district, Gustav stood in place as his body bloated and turned greenish. Bum. He stomped his feet on the ground, and the cage surrounding the upper district began to open up. Grhaiiaya, the ground quaked lightly as the Iro silk walls rescinded. In a couple of seconds, the entirety of the walls descended completely, and the upper district was open once again. MBO officers that had surrounded the upper district were visible now. They had formed a circular wall of their own, due to their numbers being in the 1,000. Gustav's body slowly returned to normal as he looked around without a morsel of surprise in his expression. He already knew they were there. The MBO officers were shocked to see the upper district in such a devastating look. It was expected that the whole Arabia city would take a hit from this operation, since the Janxidus members would not just back down without a fight. However, they hadn't expected this much destruction. A massive crater that covered a quarter of the upper district, another large hole in a corner of the upper district, multiple structures with cracks, and even some pile of dust and spots that used to contain houses. Arabia City now looked like a place that had been devastated by war. This is the power of mixed bloods, and the earth is truly in danger having bore such monstrosities. The main leader, who hid in the other dimensional frequency, thought to himself. He was even more affirmed that mixed bloods should be wiped off the face of the earth now, or it would lead to destruction. On the surface, the MBO officer's face darkened even more as they spotted a pile of corpses scattered across the upper district. The ashy and dried-out-looking corpses were clad in MBO uniforms, so it was obvious these were the MBO officers who were ensnared in the roots before they could escape the upper district. There were thousands of corpses like these. The other corpses they could find had incomplete body parts, and dried blood could be spotted. Chapter 1164S Gustav, and everyone noted the rules as the river-splitting challenge illustrations were displayed on the massive floating screens above. "Oh, so we'll be using that," Rhea muttered while staring at the display of a circular bead on the floating screens. "We are also allowed to use abilities too, but only through the weapon well using to split the river," Teamy voiced from the side. "How can we use that?" Rhea sounded confused as he questioned. "Just listen, you idiot," Teamy chided. The Anusa relic takes the form of the Wilder's soul and shapes it into a weapon. Whatever weapon your Anusa relic transforms into is what you must use in the river-splitting challenge. Handler 1 voice reverberated across the arena. Chatter, chatter, chatter. The revelation caused the entire place to turn rowdy as some spectators felt this might not be fair to some participants, who could tell what weapon a person would end up with, and if it would be strong enough to help them split the rivers. "Remember, the weapon isn't what matters, the wielder is," Handler 1 stated once more. He mentioned a few more things, and explained that they will be categorized with their opponents based on the system. GRRHHHHH, GBBBBBLLL. The entire arena began to quake once more as a transformation took place. This was similar to the day before with the difference of land. As the ground sunk, rivers began to spring up in place. In just a few minutes, the participants as well as all of the spectators had awe-struck faces as hundreds of rivers differing in length, depth, and widths could be spotted all across the place. Everyone could not take part in the challenge in one go, so the computerized system began to pair planets that would oppose each other. The first batch of planets were 100 in number. The other planets had to stay behind on the massive platform which had shifted to the other end of the arena. The arena had expanded so much, it had become the size of an entire city, with up to 1,000 rivers of different sizes. Earth wasn't amongst the first batch of planets, so Gustav and the others remained on the platform while watching the screens. Planet Yardle versus Planet Oxla, Planet Draconitz versus Planet Cyrus, Planet Foing versus Planet Tribits, Planet Claxosape versus Planet Osius, Planet Dia versus Planet Thoxelos. Gustav stared at list of planets facing each other in the first batch, which was precisely 50 in number. He would have been conflicted as to which one to focus on, but with Gustav's perception and mental fortitude, he could watch every single battle at the same time. Analyzing each one of them at the same time was also something he could do due to his high intelligence. The Claxosapes are definitely going to win against Planet Osius. They took first the last time, an alien species from a group besides Earth voiced out. Gustav chuckled lightly upon hearing that, causing their attention to be drawn to him. "Is something funny, Earthling?" the white-headed alien with transparent skin questioned. "Yes," Gustav replied. "Anda, why does this Earthling find this funny?" Another one from their group questioned. "That is what I am about to ask him." "Hey, Earthling, just because you 2 second in the last challenge doesn't mean you're better than we Zionsi. If you are put against us in this challenge, you're losing, understated, while pointing at Gustav. Sure, but the Klaxosapes aren't winning, Gustav replied with an unbothered expression. Wanna bet on it? Unquestioned. I would, but you don't have anything to offer. So no, Gustav responded with a disinterested tone. Who says I don't? I'll give you my sway force. Understated. Gasp dash, have you gone crazy? Pialfa and Dialpha, no one. Oh, dash, this fool. His teammates yelled from the side with looks of shock. I don't know what that is, so frankly, I'm still uninterested, Gustav shrugged. Please visit Pialfalpha-1. The Earthling doesn't know our sway force is where our ability to connect with the laws of nature comes from. Their captain spoke up with a calm voice. Seems pretty valuable. Aeldris, who has been listening from the side, spoke up. Meh, it's pretty useless to me, but if you say so, then no problem, Gustav replied. Not so fast, Earthling. If you lose, you have to forfeit and let a substitute take your place as Earth's captain, understated. All right, watch. Gustav gestured at the screens which displayed planets already going against each other. On the screen where the Klaxosapes and Ozus were displayed, both groups could be seen standing behind a lineup of rivers waiting their turn. A Klaxosape with thorny-like rocky body stood on the left side, while an Ozus stood on the far right. The Ozus looked scrawny and less intimidating compared to the Klaxosape, especially with the two thin stalk-like poles that held his eyes above his head. The first river they had to split was a 200 feet long river. Both of them had separate 200 feet long rivers in front of them to split. After that, a longer river was up ahead. And if they were to successfully split that as well, they'd move to the next one. There were 10 rivers each to split in total. It was already expected that no one would be able to split all the rivers to the end, but the person that managed to split the farthest, or most out of the two, would automatically win. What made it worse was the gravitational beams descending from above upon the rivers ahead. It turned out that the gravitational force descending upon the rivers increased in strength the farther they went. The Klaxosape and Ozus were ready to begin when two Anusa relic appeared in front of them. They reached out to grab theirs, and a bright glow encapsulated their figure. In the next instant, different weapons appeared in their grasp. The Klaxosape raised his rocky right hand in joy as he spotted the massive sapphire-like axe in his grasp. It looked so sharp that one could feel it cutting the air with barely any movement. The Ozus had a bow in his grasp that looked fairly ordinary. It was nothing noteworthy compared to the Klaxosapes. Cuckoo! The Klaxosape laughed at the Ozus while placing his second hand on the body of the axe. Yah-wah! The Klaxosape loud roar caused the river ahead to form waves as he strengthened his grip on the body of the axe. In the next instant, he swung it down heavily, causing fierce winds to blast across the vicinity as a destructive milky-colored arc traveled forward with intensity. WWWHIHHH. The 200-feet river was instantly split as all the water within flew out sideways while the destructive milky-colored arc continued to travel forward. WWWHIHHH. WWWHIHHH. Two more rivers ahead with thin gravitational beams pointing at them from above also got split. The milky arc disappeared after successfully splitting 3 rivers in one go. Cheer, cheer, gasp. Loud cheers and gasps were heard from the spectators' area after some of them witnessed this. The challenge had also started in other areas since 100 of them were having it at the same time, yet the spectators hadn't seen any other participants split 3 rivers in a go. The Klaxosape's teammates behind cheered their teammate on as he hit his chest repeatedly with a look of satisfaction. The Ozus on the other end already had his bow pointing at the river as he pulled the string. A brownish arrow made of energy appeared, and he released it. Thwai, the arrow shot forward with speed and threw a line through the 200 river in an instant. The Ozus moved to the next river up ahead while the Klaxosape moved to the 4th river, which was more than 30,000 feet away. "I told you the Klaxosapes will win," Unda, who was watching from the side, voiced. Gustav didn't reply and kept watching with an unbothered face. All they could do at the moment was watch, since it was still a long way from being their turn. The Klaxosape continued to advance quickly until he arrived at the 7th river. At this same moment, the Ozus had just reached the 4th river. He wasn't quick, but he hadn't failed in splitting any river so far. The Klaxosape stared at the pillar of gravitational force shooting down from the sky onto the 7th river. The river was looking as still as a solid ground due to the amount of gravitational force in place. His face turned serious as he clenched the massive axe tightly once more and poured strength into his arms. The ground began to quake, but the river in front remained unaffected till he raised his arms and brought them down with force. WWWHIHHH, a massive milky-colored arc shot forth once again, ripping the ground open as it headed for the river. Chapter 1165 WWWHHH, a massive milky-colored arc shot forth once again, ripping the ground open as it headed for the river. It cut 200,000 feet across the long river with intensity, causing waves to jump to the sides. The ground floor of the river was instantly revealed as the force from the swing kept sweeping forward till it arrived at the middle of the river. It began losing momentum until it finally came to a stop after reaching the 3rd quarter of the river, blowing only a little part of the water towards the side. "Oh, you!" The voices from the spectators' corner had reduced as some of them witnessed this. "What? GHRHHH?" The Klaxosape voiced in dissatisfaction. "Try again, Gunfer," the captain of the Klaxosape, who happened to be the largest, stated far behind where they were cooped up. Gunfer looked back and could see that his opponent from the Ozus side just finished splitting the 4th river and was now moving to the 5th. "Tyish, I still have 2 more tries," he hissed before raising the axe once more. KRRYCHHHHH. More pointy rocks appeared on his arms as it became even larger than before. "Yahas!" Gunfer roared once more as he swung the axe downwards with intensity. WWWHIHHH. This time an even more powerful blast rang out as the force from the swing sliced through the air and arrived before the river instantly. It split more than half of the river in the next moment as waves rose into the air on the left and right sides simultaneously, breaking past the 3rd quarter of the river. The arc created from the force began to lose momentum. The instant it broke through the start of the 4th quarter, the arc lost momentum completely and whittled out. Gunfer had a look of seriousness as he realized that this still was unable to split the entirety of the 7th river. GHHHRHH. He growled in disappointment as he looked back and noticed that the Ozus had arrived at the 6th river. Once the Ozus opponent managed to split the 6th, both of them would have the same progress. His speed at the start would have been for nothing. "I didn't want to use this initially, but there is no other option. I must get to the 8th river," he said internally. "Gunfer is going to use core transformation. It doesn't look like he has any other choice." His teammates watching from behind could already tell what was about to happen. So long as he progresses and wins, it doesn't matter, even though he will be weaker for the next 3 days. The captain also spoke. Up ahead, Gunfer clenched his fist as he roared once more while his body began to rapidly enlarge. KRRYCHHH, Gleer. Rock cracking sounds rang out for a couple of seconds as his initial 15 feet tall frame increased almost 3 times in size. Dash. Now, the Ozus have no chance of winning. This was the thought process of most spectators who had their eyes fixed on the screen that displayed Planet, Klaxosape, and Ozius. WWWHIHHH. Gunfer once more swung his axe forward, which now seemed a bit smaller for him due to his large size. The force generated from this swing was almost 100 more than before. Cracks and dust spread across the vicinity from his standing point as the arc created shot forward. The whole river was instantly split into two halves before the arc ran out of momentum. Cheers, cheers, cheers. At this same instant, the Ozus had arrived before his own seventh river. He pulled the string to his bow backward, as the same brown arrow made from light rays appeared once more. Tuck! Gunfer scoffed as he waited to watch the Ozus lose, but was soon left with a look of dismay. Fwyish, the instant the Ozus released his string, the arrow powerfully shot forward, clearing everything in its path. As it glided over the surface of the river, waves blasted sideways, leaving clear path in the middle. The ground floor of the river was spotted in the middle, as its entirety was split instantly. Gasp, cheers, cheers, cheers. The sounds of shocks and cheers reverberated across the vicinity as both the spectators and Gunfer was left with looks of disbelief. Pialfalfa no one. Oh, I can't lose, he yelled as he arrived before the 8th river with a look of confidence. He WSS still in his massive form as he swung his axe forward with all of his might once more. Minutes later, please visit Pialfalfa-1. I lost. Gunfer stood in place with a look of confoundment as his body decreased in size. Bam! He fell to his knees with a look of defeat as he stared at the river before him, which was in an unaffected state even after he had swung his axe with all of his might. On his opponent's side, a completely split river could be seen up ahead. The Ozus slowly lowered his bow as the screens displayed the current score. Planet Claxosape 0 to 1 Planet Ozius. The Ozus had won the first bout since Gunfer had made use of his last turn, which meant failure if he was unable to split the river. Everyone had been mostly shocked because upon their arrival at the 8th river, the Ozus bow increased in size, and when he pulled the string, 3 massive arrows had appeared instead of 1. It turned out he had been saving his power for this moment. As expected of Planet Ozius Captain, everyone came to the realization that Ozius Captain Rundaf used a high amount of power at this stage. The 8th river was like trying to hit a solidly refined ground. Due to the gravitational force, it was very sturdy. After the two opponents finished their bout, both sides sent out their next representatives. Another one of the Claxosapes moved out, as well as an Ozus, as a new bout began. Just because the first one won doesn't mean it will always be like that. They still need to win 10 more times before they can eradicate the opposition, understated from the platform. Sure, Gustav smiled while responding as they kept watching. Hours later, what? How? Unda stood in place with a look of shock as the results for the first batch displayed on the screens. Planet Claxosape 3 to 11 Planet Ozius. Planet Ozius wins. Planet Draconitz wins. Planet Foing 7 to 11 Planet Triptez. Planet Triptez wins. Planet Diov 11 to 0 Planet Foxalos. Planet Diov wins. Planet Osiris 11 to 5 Planet Astrian. Planet Osiris wins. The list continued with different screens showing the outcome of the first batch for the River Splitting Challenge. It turned out Planet Ozius, who looked weaker in comparison to Planet Claxosape, had won, just as Gustav predicted. Unda looked completely shattered as he stared at Gustav's devilish grin along with his condescending gaze. Shit, this idiot is done for. Their captain cursed upon seeing the outcome of the bet. The entire arena was still loud with cheers and moans of disappointment in different corners, unaware of the wager that had just gone down. The first batch of planets participants were getting off the arena at this point, as the computerized system began pairing the next set of planets. "We're up, Gus," Eldris voiced from the side, as Earth appeared on one of the screens above. "They'll be getting that sway after we're done. Make sure you don't run," Gustav announced with a strong tone. Unda slumped onto the ground upon hearing that, as the rest of his teammates also had looks of horror on their faces. It turned out that only the Claxosape's captain and 2 others had managed to win their opponents in the River Splitting Challenge. The Ozus were just too powerful despite how weak-looking they were. Gustav and the others moved towards the platform that brought them to the very end of the arena, where the river-splitting challenge would begin. He stared at the rivers up ahead with a contemplative expression. So far, no one had managed to successfully split the ninth river completely. The only person who came close to completing this feat was the Klaxosape's captain, whose team still lost eventually. Only a few managed to cut a little into the ninth river, which included participants from planets Gustav had dubbed dangerous. Looks like it's our turn next. SS, am I supposed to battle whatever that I is? Or what? Gustav questioned while raising his eyebrows. No, that is nothing compared to what is coming. The system replied with a cryptic tone. Gustav, the only hint I can give you is what had just happened today is one of the 5 premonitions. The system added. 5 premonitions? Does that mean 4 more similar events will take place in the future? Gustav questioned. You're tuning in to the Mystic Fist YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.